What's up, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. Thank you for dropping in. And as we wait for everybody else to come in and start filling in the queue, I want to say hello to everyone. First of all, Mr. Red Jack 12, Brian, thank you for dropping in today. I wanted to tell you, Brian, after last week's show, which unless I'm mistaken, I think it might have been the first time ever that you didn't drop in. Right after the show, when we closed it out, I went over to see Vivian, and the first thing she said to me before I could say anything, she says, "Oh, I hope Mr. Red Jack's okay. I hope Brian's fine because he's always here. He wasn't here. He usually comes in at least says hi, you know." So glad to see you, and glad to see, of course, I saw you throughout the week on CAF, so I know that everything was fine, but we were slightly concerned and hoping that everything was fine. So as soon as I saw you on CAF, though, I let her know that you were good. So there you go. Happy to see that, and happy to see you here and have you again back as always. Comic Art Boston, thank you for coming by when you can. Thank you, and yes, thanks to Brian. Absolutely. There you go. Southern Comic Geek, what is up, Jason? And my man Alberto. From behind the scenes, throwing out the comments. Oh, Larry Wilson, awesome. What's up, Larry? Hope you got some good, strong opinions tonight. We want them from everybody. This is what makes the all these shows fun, and especially with tonight's topic, right? So thank you for dropping in. That's great. Good to see you. Number one Marvel fan. How are you, sir? CJ, as always, good to see you. Hope you're doing well. Mr. Easy Go Lucky. Hello, my friend. The Rickster, as always. Peace, brother. Jason, what's up? What is up? Good to see you, sir. And I'm not sure why we need to guess Hobby Halbert's state, but and what his address is, but you might have to let us know what that's all about, Marcus. Good to see you, sir. And that's very nice of you. Thank you, Comic Art Boston. I appreciate it. And yeah, let's get this thing rolling. Yes, of course, if you don't mind, everybody, and those of you also, those of you watching live, of course, please hit the thumbs up button, and those of you watching on Rewind, would appreciate it if you just hit the thumbs up. It doesn't take more than half a second to just do that. Do a little click, and that helps the channel out. Not financially. Don't think you're giving me money. It helps. It helps. The more interaction you have with the channels on YouTube, any channel, the more likely it is that YouTube's algorithm will put that content in front of other people who would probably enjoy it. So that's why. So please do that. I'd appreciate it. And if you like what you see, I appreciate it. If you'd want to subscribe, that's fine too. There we go. So got my press shirt on for Marcus. Oh, excellent. No red pants. That's good. We don't want to scare too many people away. Alberto, I hadn't realized that there was a lengthy period when you did not post any artwork to CAF. Was there any reason for that? Look at you already asking questions to the guy. Okay. Good evening to you, John. Good to see you, sir. And Alberto's answering you, so that's excellent. Tariq, what's up, brother? Good to see you, sir. As always, Carl from Hawaii. Excellent. Good to see you, sir. TJ, good to see you as always. Who else we got? NSN, the Mikester. Okay. You know what? I would have had I been able to kind of find something good, whatever. But yeah, whatever. Yeah, it's not happening. It's a good play on words, though. I kind of dug it. I figured, yeah, it's not really an address, anyways, right? The address is just going to be the chatting part. But yeah, I thought it was kind of cute, clever, you know. Jeff Wedding, what's up, sir? Good to see you as always. Stevie B in the house. State of hobby address. Hobby Hal. And what else? Who else? Okay, a few jokes. Okay, good evening. All right, there we go. Everybody, it was my extreme pleasure to welcome my longtime friend Alberto Gonzalez, Mr. Captain America collector himself, who you all know very, very well, into my show for the first time. Here he is. What is up?
Yo, yo, yo. What's going on?
Good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for doing this, man.
Thank you for having me, and good to see the chat's already going. And yeah, Mark is already starting trouble and getting the conversation going. So
is he starting trouble? Let me see.
Let's start about those prints for 10K on eBay already.
Okay. I didn't see that. So if that's true, you're going to have to sort of give us a little bit of background info on that, Marcus. Because if one of these monotype print things you're talking about it went for 10K, I actually would love it if you would just email me the link, because I want to see it with my own eyes. Otherwise, it's going to be hard to believe. Anytime you want, Ilya. Good to see you, sir, by the way. Thank you for dropping in. Anytime you want. Whatever you want to claim, you claim it, you know? So okay. It was a Batman print. Okay, yeah, but I need to know more. What kind of a Batman print? Like a mono print or just a regular print? Or like, mono print as in a print of an original art type page? I don't know. Either way, whatever it is, the price is already sounding outrageous to me. So yes. Oh, and Comic Art Boston says, oh yes, that scam. So people apparently have heard about this. It's so funny given the fact that the impetus for tonight's show was that, I had a lot of friends had been reaching out to me over the last few months about pointing out things that had been selling. And so it's kind of ironic that nobody pointed out this crazy $10,000 print to me. So ironic and bizarre, but interesting. So I want to know more. Somebody send me that link. Howdy. What is up, Rom? 2814. And Murdoch, good to see you, sir, as always. And it's from my favorite artist, Kelly. Oh, okay. I know what you guys are talking about now. Yes, I do know. Well, that's not really okay, because I thought you meant, a print that, somebody had printed up on behalf of the artist, like a mono print kind of thing. Not that wouldn't be crazy, but yeah, the fact that it was this thing that, a lot of people, in fairness, don't know about it. But once you see the backside of that thing and you see clearly that doesn't belong in a piece of original art, so if that's the thing you're talking about, although here's the thing, if that's the thing you're talking about, I think I saw it get canceled. I thought I saw the auction get canceled. So I don't know. How did it go for 10K? I'm pretty sure I saw it get canceled. I thought the guy shut it down or something. Pretty sure he did anyways. Is he going to rip up a print behind? What do you mean? I don't have prints behind me. Why would he be print? Why would he want to rip up my prints? No. Hey, a lot of chat. Holy crap, a lot of chat. All of prints go for 10. Yeah, well, it's all. Of course, it's crazy. Yes, 15K is going right for an advertisement. Apparently, cold apple pie into the room. The collector channel this Sunday. Who can ask for anything? That's very sweet of you, Carl. Appreciate it. Oh, look at that. My wife is saying hello to you, even. Thanks, honey. That's very sweet of you. Hey, Mikhail. A print advertising the artist edition on one side. Yeah, okay, so that was the one. Yeah. And facsimile of original art. Yeah, that's the one. Like I said, I'm pretty sure I'd seen it. The guy cancel it or stop it or whatever. No, maybe not. Okay, whatever. So, okay, 10 grand for that thing. Well, somebody's going to get really seriously hurt. Obviously, whoever won it, since it's hard to reach out. You can't really reach out to those people, right? Yeah, you can't reach out to them to warn them. No, exactly. And Carl says hello to Alberto also. And Room the Decipherer. Yes, the advert. Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Easy Go Lucky. And let's get back to Alberto, please. Yeah, well, we will, but we're it's not your standard. It's not an episode of Hangout or Show and Tell tonight, Comic Art Boston. So, Alberto, just so you guys know, I might as well just tell you now. Alberto is actually scheduled to do a interview on Comic Art Live and he can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going by memory here. I believe he told me on the 9th of May. Would that be it, my friend?
Yeah, I believe that's when Bill had scheduled me for. I haven't followed up with him in a couple of weeks. May seems far away still, but
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's still May, but I think it's May 9th, whatever. But keep tuned in for that. But yeah, so he's going to do that, and so that's why I decided, because Alberto wanted to come on, and so I was okay. That's great then. But since you're already committed to doing that May episode, I figured, well, not that I do interviews, right? But like on my Hangout show, it's a little bit of, ask a few questions of my friend's background so they can tell everybody and we get to know each other a little bit better. So it's a bit more similar to interview, and there's a little bit of art shown in a typical Hangout episode. And on the Comic Art Live interview shows, that's also kind of how it is, but more interview, more questions, and then also show some art. So I figured, you know what? How about you come on and we just do something totally, a new show. And it's something that we can talk about because, we're all as collectors talking about this topic anyways, all the time amongst ourselves privately. So I figured, why not do that? And then this way, whatever we do tonight, I don't ask him anything about, telling us about, how he got into comics and then artwork. He can take care of that on Comic Art Live. And then hopefully at some point later in the year, if he's willing, he can then maybe come back here and do an episode with me of show and tell, because those are mostly about the art and talking about the art. And then it's, a lot more art and less chat about, whatever random stuff. And if he wants to do that, then we'd love to have him back. And so that's it. So that's why he's here. So there you go. So guys, David, what's up? Another guy from Hawaii. Good to see you, sir. Haven't seen you in a bit. And okay, thanks, Marcus. It did go. Okay, so I must have been I looked at another auction on eBay that got canceled, and I just confused it for that one, So Tariq says, I wonder who paid that much for it. Yeah, well, we may find out. Maybe not. Who knows, right? I like to think that nobody who would win something like that is part of our community. And what I mean by that is simply that I think our community, those of us who socialize a lot together, we're pretty well versed in the ins and outs of original art. And I'd like to think that 99% of us wouldn't get burned by something like that. So I'm assuming it's probably somebody kind of much more of a newbie. And not that makes it better. I feel terrible for whoever that person is, and I do hope that somebody can somehow reach out to him and he doesn't get burned, we'll see what happens, and what I'm thinking is I'm actually kind of hoping that the winner was somebody who was sick and tired of seeing what was happening and decided maybe just to bid it up so that they purposely become the winner with the plan, obviously the intent to not pay and then complain to eBay about it. Hopefully that's what happened. I would love to hear that was the case, But yeah, we'll see, and soon enough we may or we may not see. So yeah, we'll find out, or we won't soon enough, I guess, And okay, Dino, what's up, Dino? Good to see you, sir. And what else we got here? Looking forward to the chat on the state of the comic art. Oh yeah, no, we're and I hope you have your opinions too, because I know you do, Ilya. So we want to hear from everybody. This is about all of us. On my channel, it's a channel for all of us to talk. So that's what we're gonna do. I just want to quickly catch up as much as I can to the front of the line of the comments. Went Matt for okay. Would send me one of his Captain America prints used to have for his the background. I did, and you never acknowledged me until now. Not even so much as a thanks for the print. Not that you asked for it, not that I needed to send you. I thought it was a good laugh. I thought you'd appreciate the laugh. Okay, get over it, Comic Art Boston. You're gonna hear from him soon enough. Okay, hey, David in Australia. What's up, David? Good to see you, sir. And Okay, hello, hello. Hi, Stanley. What's up, Stanley? Good to see you. And Ron 2814 can't decide if the production art all over eBay is a scam or just a different niche. That's the sad part, is that a little bit of it is authentic, but most of it is not, and that's a whole other topic. Yeah, you're already asking questions. Okay, you want to take this real quick while I check out the last few comments, Alberto? What does Alberto think that the impact of digital is or will be for the hobby?
I think that's actually a very interesting point. I feel like lately in CAF, I get excited every time because I get an email thinking a lot of Captain America pieces are there. Then I see that they're artist proofs, and it's something that honestly I have not gotten the appeal of it. I appreciate that from an artist standpoint. It's nice and much faster to create all digital art, but it's something that I am just not able to get to the point of spending money for what's basically a glorified printout, if you ask me. I'm okay with buying things where they're penciled digitally and then inked by hand the old-fashioned way. I don't necessarily have a problem with blueprints or digital pencils or whatever, but just getting a digital art print is just, call it artist proof, call it whatever you want. It's ultimately a printout and not something that I can see myself collecting, and hopefully something that won't become the only way of getting art anymore, because it's going to be sad, I think, for all of us if any new comics start just being totally digital. That's for sure.
Yeah, Ron just can't imagine ever buying one of those monoprints. A lot of people can't. A lot of people can't, my friend. Believe me. Caesar, are you in Japan? Jumping in for a quick thumbs up from the land of the rising sun. What are you doing in Japan? Wow. Okay, that's really cool. I appreciate it, brother. Wow. Have a great time. Wow, that's really cool. Cool. Good for you. Have some fun, man. And evening, James. What's up, Mr. Oklahoma? And I did want to. Who else I wanted to show here? Murdoch, about those printing plates, those metal printing plates. I've always assumed that those were real, and the reason being that I just, not because I have any experience with printing plates, but it sort of dawns on me that why would anybody go to the trouble of manufacturing a fake printing plate? Like, you know what I mean? I mean, the ones that I've seen on eBay, these guys claim that they're like, I don't know, 20, 40 pounds. I don't know. They're really heavy, right? So why would you go to that trouble of having to manufacture, a negative of a comic cover engraved into metal or whatever? Like, I just can't imagine it's not real, But then again, like I said, what the hell do I know about any of that stuff, But it takes time and effort and skill to do digital art too. Well, it's the same. It's the same effort. And nobody's saying anything about the effort and skill. It's the exact same thing. It's just a tool. The computer's a tool, just like the pencil's a tool. So that... Yeah,
and I don't think here, Ruben, anyone's going to be disagreeing that there's no beautiful art being done digitally, right? I think there's great art being done, and I know some traditional artists have moved totally digital, and that's perfectly okay. It's just from the perspective of art collecting is not something that I consider necessarily art collecting. I will be perfectly happy to read those comics, and to me it's no different from buying a poster, right? How many posters were created that you can find from any of the comics we all read as a kid, right? There's going to be posters from Crisis on Infinite Earths or The Death of Superman and all that stuff that all look great, but I don't necessarily consider them original art, even though they're great. I just personally don't think they're part of the art collecting hobby, if you ask me. But yeah, they're definitely beautiful, and I think it's great that the artists are able to save time and effort and save the process of having to create the pencils, ship them to the inker, wait for the inker to do it, then the inker has to ship them to the publisher or scan them or whatever. It saves a lot in the process, but it does kind of take away from having an actual hand-drawn piece, I think.
Hey, and it's a time saver. The bottom line is is everybody has to remember, we are all collecting a byproduct. We are not really collecting a product, right? It's a byproduct, right? What ultimately matters to the publisher is the printed comic book. That's all that matters to them, right? And in order to get to the printed comic books, these artists need to draw these images. And if it's faster for them to do it digitally, and they don't mind losing the benefit of the original art sales, then more power to them. Of course they should do it, right? It's sad for collectors in the future going forward, but you know, what are you going to do? I can't knock them for doing it, though. That's all I'm saying, you know. James, why would you not ever talk to somebody who owned a printing plate? I mean, I agree that it's a really bizarre thing that you would want to kind of collect, but I don't think there's, like, I would gather to say that there's probably nobody that really collects those. I imagine that people have purchased some of them as fun keepsakes of an issue that, you know, they remember fondly, and you know, because maybe they saw, oh, you know, Amazing Spider-Man 252 or whatever issue, you know, and oh, printing plate, and so they bought it, you know, just as this weird sort of esoteric collectible. That I can see, you know. I wouldn't blame anybody for, you know, taking, you know, buying one on a lark like that. But actually collecting and keep buying them, like, I don't think anybody would do that. But then again, I don't know. I don't follow those auctions. I don't know. I certainly don't know anybody in this hobby who has claimed to me that they have bought that kind of stuff, you know. So yeah, there you go. Yeah, it can still be amazing. Just not the interest in paying money for a printout. No, absolutely, I get it. I think most of us are in agreement with that anyway. So no problem with the artist wanting to do the work that way, in my opinion. It's just that for those of us who only care about the collecting aspect of it, of course, it's frustrating, you know. So yeah, that's print collecting.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting, Ruben, too, right? We do see some artists that recognize that as well, and even though they're primarily digital artists, they will do the cover and maybe a splash or two or some of the key parts by hand, so they have actually something to sell and put in the market and make money out of it. But they know that most panel pages probably are not going to go for anything, so they can do those in a more efficient way. So I think it's tougher for people who actually want to collect complete issues. That's going to become definitely impossible, I think, because of that process. But I do think that even artists recognize that they can these days make a little more money by doing some of those things that they can sell in paper and stick to digital for other stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Now, number one Marvel fan, you make a look. You're not making a point that we haven't already made in the past. You know, when this topic has come up, certainly on my show in the past. Sure, there's plenty of older art that you know we can all get. But again, you can't just think of it from your perspective, right? It is frustrating for the people because there are plenty of collectors they don't care about the older stuff, right? There's plenty of collectors whose interests lie solely in like the last 5-10 years worth of comic art, you know? So for them, I certainly understand how much more frustrating it could be that a lot of what they want may not be available, you know? And Ilya says that I think art on paper is scale. Well, of course, especially if inked. Digital is 100% forgiving. Ink and paper isn't. Well, no, but it's all forgiving. It's just that it's easier and quicker to correct mistakes, right? If you think about it, I mean, like you can make mistakes with both methods, digitally or traditional, right? Mm-hmm. But you use whiteout for the correction or an eraser on traditional. And digitally, it's just whatever. You use your little digital eraser and that's it, right? Or a click of a button or whatever it is. But they're both forgiving. You know, it's just, again, to correct yourself, it's more work traditionally, of course. That's, you know, that's it. It's all about the time savings when it comes to digital. That's what it's really all about, you know? If the original art market gets stronger, art might stay mostly physical. Yeah, I honestly, guys, when it comes to this whole topic, people keep saying, oh, you know, we're going digital. Yeah, some artists are, but I'm still of the opinion, you know, not having counted, I haven't counted, but just from what I've seen off the top of my head, to me, it still feels like it's the vast majority. Like I feel that the traditional artists still vastly outnumber the digital ones. What do you think, Alberto?
I think for sure we're still seeing most things written in, but there's definitely a tendency, right? And I don't know for how long that will be, because even a lot of traditional artists are moving that way, right? I know I wanted to always get a Ron Lim cover of Captain America from the 90s, and lately I was able to pick one up, but the only way I could pick a recent one that he did was strictly pencils only, because he's getting his stuff inked digitally these days. So I can't get a recent piece from him that's actually inked the old-fashioned way by hand, and I had to settle for a pencils only piece. And I wouldn't call it settle, because I'm perfectly happy with it, but I think we're definitely going to be seeing that happen more and more. And I think we are definitely seeing that more and more. I see a lot of more pencil only pages these days than we ever used to have for recent stuff. The inking seems to be the first thing that has moved to digital inking for sure, and coloring. And I think eventually we'll see that as well happen more for pencilers, but I think we're already seeing it.
Yeah, no, good. That's good points, man. The same reason I don't collect Bradford Exchange collector plates. You don't, Rick. You don't collect those because they're crap. Like they're like cheesy tchotchkes. You know what I mean? Like that's why you don't collect them, or maybe also because they don't have superheroes on them. You know, but yeah, yes, that's funny. And I wanted to just quickly do this, because Marcus is speaking out to James about the printing plates. If you could get the printing plate for Uncanny 137 for $50, you wouldn't want it? And James says, not on purpose. I don't believe it, man. If I was at a con and I walked up to you, James, and I said, James, man, check it out. It's the cover to 137. It's the printing plate for it. Only $50. It weighs 40 pounds, but you're going to have to carry it around and lug it around all weekend. But it's yours for $50. I think you'd give me the 50. You'd put it down somewhere safe where you wouldn't have to lug it. And you take it to Oklahoma with you and figure out what to do with it. Because for $50, you know, I think so anyways. Maybe I'm wrong. I just have never talked to anyone that has owned one. Well, that's what I was saying earlier, right? Me neither. Certainly, you know, but again, depending on what the weight is, because I really don't know if it's 40 or 20 or 10 or 6 pounds, whatever. I don't know the weight, but if it was easily carryable, like, I don't know, 5 to 6 or 7, 8 pounds for $50 of a key issue, I might buy one just for the heck of it. You know, new artist, the smart would stay doing it the old way, but it's not, again, #1 Marvel fan. It's not about smart. Listen, they're not stupid. They know that there is a burgeoning market for original artwork out there already, right? It's not some well-kept secret. They already know this, and yet they decide to do it digitally anyways. They're well aware that they give that up. You have to also remember, a lot of artists, they're literally just not fast enough to maintain a monthly schedule, okay? So keep that in mind. If you know deep down you cannot meet a monthly schedule, that means you're probably never going to have a career in comics. Not for a long time anyways. It just doesn't pay enough unless you do regular, steady work every month, you know? And so that's the thing. So if for them, the way some of those guys have to see it, and gals, is, okay, the only way I can meet my monthly schedule is if I do it digitally, and that's it. And if it means, you know, obviously that's going to mean no original art, but listen, I got into this to become a comic book artist, not to placate original art collectors. You know what I mean? So for them, they want to be comic artists, and if that's the only way they can do it, and for a lot of them, it is the speed factor. It matters, and that's the point I'm going to make about that.
And I think ultimately there's a lot of logistics here too, right? I think today we're seeing more than ever artists that are all over the world, for sure. Before, it used to be very American centric, right? So shipping the pages back and forth was probably a lot easier from pencilers to inkers. But these days we do see a lot of artists from Spain, from the Philippines, from Asia,
Brazil.
in different
Yeah.
places, Brazil, that probably the logistics of creating those pages, shipping them, or whatever to whoever's going to ink them or the publisher, it's probably a process that's become a lot harder as well than it used to be. And going digital does help from that perspective. And ultimately, the main goal of a lot of these artists is to create this comics, right? They're not creating art to sell it necessarily as much as they know there's money in it, but they're getting the break because Marvel or DC or any other publisher is paying them to do the work, and that's ultimately their key priority, and they're going to do whatever it takes for them to get it done. So
Yeah, well said. Mike, I put your comment up because I want to make it perfectly clear. Just because I and the majority of original art collectors don't care for prints doesn't mean that you shouldn't. And I'm glad you spoke up and said that, because if you're cool with it, like I always say, if you're cool with buying whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what we're talking about. Like if you're good with it and you like it, it doesn't matter that 100 other people say, well, that's shit. You understand? So the fact that you spoke up, knowing that you're among friends, that's a good thing, obviously. That helps you. Nobody's gonna chew you out for doing that or saying that, right? So that's a nice thing that you're in a friendly environment here. But the fact still remains. The fact that you admitted this, that you are okay with buying a monoprint, amongst a group of people who typically have no interest in that. That's wonderful, because as long as you are happy with it and you're okay spending the whatever the cost is for it, that's all that ultimately matters. As long as you're happy and you're collecting, that's what matters. All I ever say is, please just don't, with newer collectors as they come in after you, and if they're seeking knowledge, don't tell them it's original art. As long as you don't, screw the pooch that way, I'm good with you. People buy whatever they want, right? So you're buying art. Yes, you're buying art. It's art, right? A printout, and there's art on that printout. It's just not original art. So as long as that distinction is made, I'm good with that, man. So,
and I think Mike should be happy, because the moment that more people start thinking like him and everybody wants to start buying artist proof, especially at the point where we might not have a choice anymore, those prices are going to go up. So maybe now is the time to buy those artist proofs. But again, what does getting an artist proof means in the end? Is it something that you can resell once you have an artist proof? I mean, it ends up being a digital piece. So is it something that whenever I get tired of it, I can go and put it on eBay or on Heritage or anything? I'm going to guess at this point it's a one-time purchase you buy from the rep or whatever, but I don't see the way of reselling those pieces.
You're right. What you're basically talking about is, at least as of yet, you don't see an aftermarket having been created yet for this stuff, right? Yeah, because it's too new, right? It's still too new. There's still not enough people buying it on the primary market, right? That's the thing, right? There's not all that many people. I mean, any of us can ask ourselves, how many people do I know who has admitted to me to having purchased mono prints, or prints of these, printouts from digital artists? I don't know many. I mean, there's been a few here on my channel and my shows. There's a few guys who've admitted that they don't mind, and they purchased one or two, like Mike and Jason earlier, but very, very minimal, right? So that's the thing. So until that market gets going and becomes more of a sort of a mainstream thing, you're never really going to get a viable secondary market, right? Because you've got to have an established primary one before you can have a secondary one, right? So there you go. And I agree with you, Alberto. That's the thing. I think that's a concern for all of us. The fact that, yes, we all love art because we love it because it's unique and original and blah 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 and all that. All the good things that come with buying original art, right? We all buy for those similar reasons, right? But I think, and I've always said this, and some people have in the past not admitted to this. I don't believe it. To some degree, I think every one of us collects original art. Also, for all the reasons we always talk about, but also because we know deep down in the back of our minds, okay, in our hearts, we know that if we ever need to pull the money back out of it, we can. Mm-hmm. Okay, so putting it another way, I believe deep down, every last one of us who collects original art would not collect it. Let's say, okay, it's a crazy hypothetical, but let's say original art always cost anywhere from $50 a page to $200 and never above that, okay? Let's just say that hypothetically. I truly do believe in my heart that not a single one of us, or maybe there's always an exception to the rule, or maybe one or two of us, okay? But most of us would not collect this stuff if we had to buy it from a singular source and there was no established aftermarket for it. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what I believe. In other words, what you were saying before, Alberto, if I knew that it was a one-way street where, yeah, this is the single supplier, it all comes from him, I'd buy it because I love it. I love these cool pictures and it's original and one of a kind, but he doesn't buy them back. He's not interested. He's got enough supply. He doesn't want to buy them back. And let's just assume, whatever. You couldn't put them online and there's no secondary market. I know for myself, I definitely would not buy it. Like even at $50 a piece. Hey, $50 a piece. That adds up over time. And especially if you know that those $50, every time you spend them, they're gone forever. Like there's no aftermarket, right? So that's...
Yeah, I mean, in a way, a lot of us get that, though, for posters or things on the wall. We know they're never going to be. So maybe for 50 or 200, a lot of people probably would buy them for the decorative purposes, maybe not for the collecting.
Right. But there's a difference between buying and collecting, because collecting means you keep going, right? Of course, I'm not. No, that's what you're saying is kind of like the exception to the rule. Obviously, I'm not talking about maybe you step out and you get that one or two or three posters to decorate and whatever, and then you're happy. And, I'm talking about collecting the same way we collect art. Yeah. Some of us have hundreds of pieces. Some of us have dozens. Some of us have thousands, right? Nobody would, even at $50 a piece, nobody would be owning that much original art if they knew there was no way to get rid of it. Like once you spent the money's gone. Nobody would do that. That's crazy.
Although I will say it would be a lot easier to store a bunch of digital files than having to carry around these portfolios, though. But
that's for sure.
Who knows? Maybe in 5 years we'll be looking like idiots and sounding like idiots whenever anybody watches this show because someone hogged in hundreds of artist proofs, and that's where the money is, and we'll all be regretting it. Kind of like people in the 80s that hogged and bought thousands of pieces and now are making millions out of it.
Yeah, whatever. We'll see. But I'm confident enough to be willing to bet against that. So we'll leave it there. TJ, you're right. Chaikin does, produce his art that way. But that's fine, right? Because first of all, it allows people an easy gateway into the hobby. People who may like an artist but can't afford their, let's say, pages or covers. So it's a much more affordable way to get pieces of original art. And also just want to make the point that that's really no different from what artists have done for decades, which is sell their cover prelims, for example. They make 3 or 4 cover prelims for every cover that they get published, and there you go. They can sell off the prelim or whatever, for whatever it is. It's still original art, and it's part of the production process. So, yeah. And Ilya says that maybe the younger collectors are accepting of digital, but I need physical. Look, like I said, Ilya, a lot of people have your views. I get it. A lot of us, especially those of us who skew older, very true. But who knows what will happen 2 generations from now, right? When there will already have been a full generation and more of artists who grew up with nothing but, I'm going to learn to draw. Oh, I'm going to learn on this tablet that mommy and daddy bought me, right? Digital or whatever. And so they never picked up a pencil. And who knows, maybe in a couple of generations, maybe most of the comic book art will be done digitally. It's possible. But there's also a sense of history. People love history. People always love to go back, and they love tradition. So for that reason, I believe, even new generations will still have contact with older generations who will tell them, oh no, for me it's always pencil and pen, brush, whatever, So I don't know that it ever will. Maybe, but hey, we're only alive in our lifetime, so let's just worry about our generation, and that's it. Everybody else can worry about the rest. Larry says, Libermejo recently went all digital. Yep, so glad I got a cover when you did. Yep, absolutely. I'm glad you did too. It's primarily generational and yeah, right. Exactly what I was just saying. Correct, Comic Art Boston. The mindset, right? And you'll find people who bought original art back as a novelty and put it away in a closet until it's not good. Yeah, exactly. And there's still tons of it out there in those exact similar conditions, Marcus, for sure. And listen, you guys know I love my Tom. All right, I love my Tommy Brady, and I love my Tommy Grummett, right? I always think, like, in my mental want list, I'm like, geez, like, how come I've never ever seen any of these covers from this title or that title? And then I remember, back in the 90s when Tom was only a few years into the business, I was like, he's in Saskatchewan, the province of Saskatchewan. I don't know if any of you ever even heard of that province, but he didn't really get around to conventions much back in his earlier days. He did go, he did attend some, but not much, and it makes me think the ones that he normally would attend were local conventions here in Canada. And so I'm convinced that's where a ton of the Grummett art that I've never seen before, that's where it rests, where you just said, Marcus, in like closets and just tucked away in little nooks and crannies in people's homes, from people who weren't collectors back in the 90s or 70s or 80s, when you're talking about other artists, but people who were at conventions and decided, oh, that's cool. How much is that? Oh, $25. Oh, 15. Oh, you know what? That's a cool memento I'll take home from this visit to the convention and a meeting with the artist. A lot of the stuff was bought as mementos, one-time deals by these people, took them home, looked at them, shoved it, like you say, in a closet or wherever they shoved it. And there's tons of that stuff, I believe, still out there in homes that are like that.
And I'll tell you, actually, that's the way I started my first page of comic art. I lived in Florida a long time ago, back when Green Lantern Rebirth first came out by Ethan Van Sciver, or however you say his name. But yeah, he was a friend of a comic book store that I used to frequent and get my weekly comics from. And he just showed up one day to do a signing, and he had a handful of pages and he was selling them. And I was like, oh, this is cool. I got to see the artist, and he was signing the comics, and he had these pages for $100. I was like, this is a cool memento of it. I never bought it with the intention that I would make me rich or make me any money or ever necessarily resell it, but it was like, it's cool. I was in the comic book store, the artist was there, he just released this comic, I will buy it and kind of remember it for it. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of people started buying art that way, by people just making local appearances. I'm sure that's a lot of it too.
Yeah, for sure. I remember talking to John Byrne on AOL back in the day about how he went to doing the digital lettering back in the day. AOL, yeah, the good old days. Hey, Scott, what's up, Scott? When I discovered new artists, 75% are digital, so I think it's going to age out. Interesting. That's interesting, but I don't know. I still, because that's not my experience. My experience is that it's not 75% digital. I still feel that the digital only guys and gals to me, from my experience, it just still feels like it's not rare anymore like it once was, but it still feels like they're vastly outnumbered to me. But again, it's growing. I get that. We'll see. Like you see, we'll see, right? It's still it's going to whatever the change is going to be, it's going to happen slowly over time anyways. It won't be an overnight thing. So we'll see how many of us are still around to or still in the hobby to see it and see what happens.
I do agree with Scott, though. I think any recent Captain America covers in particular, and that's my niche, right? Yeah. So I won't speak for anything, but over the last couple of years, any cover that I've really liked, that I've tried to inquire and find how to get it, has been digital. And it's been very rare for me to be able to find pencil, even pencil only, or inks only over blue lines or whatever. But it's been hard for me to get physical pieces these days, at least in the area that I'm collecting. Otherwise, I would have a lot more. And that's why a lot of my collection, yes, I like the 90s and the 80s, and that's my sweet spot. But it's not that I don't like newer stuff. It's just it's hard to find pieces from the last 3 or 4 years that are not digital, at least for what I'm looking for.
Yeah. No, good point. James, it's a good point for sure. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, because I don't know how many years it's really going to take, right, for digital to become much more prevalent, where we're all feeling like, wow, there's really like it's starting to get hard to find traditional art, from the modern contemporary guys and gals. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's true. At some point, that'll be the factor that comes into play as well, right? Where it's like, okay, well, I guess maybe I'll just focus on some older art, right? If you want to collect and you've got no choice on the contemporary stuff, at least no choice from what you're interested in, then those people, a lot of them probably will sort of say, okay, let me take a second look at that older art, which I previously wasn't perhaps as interested in. And like you say, with supply and demand, that may also affect the price of the older stuff, the traditional stuff, right? Even more. So
one thing that I respond to James here is that actually a good thing, though, to have that flood of physical pages down? I know a lot of us, yes, we have art. We want prices to go up. I think none of us as collectors want prices to go up and we acquire pieces. But at the same time, one thing that in a way does not concern me, but I think is different with this hobby, is I don't see new people, especially younger people, being able to jump into the comics because there's not these lower price pages that I think we used to find more easily. I mean, we went to this comic art show in San Francisco, a month or so ago. And while it's great, from my perspective, it was great to see a lot of that art, but you're not going to see kids or younger people in a lot of these things because they know that art is not going to be for them. So if the hobby is going to a place where we're reducing the supply and all we do is get 500, 600, 700 plus pages, and that seems to be the minimum, who's going to really join or grow the hobby at this point? I mean, I know a few folks in the chat were there in that con with me, the San Francisco con, and I think we were talking over lunch how maybe there were 3 or 4 pieces that we had seen that were under $500 and maybe a handful under $1,000. So what is that a good thing, or do we want to make sure that there's a big flow of pages coming up and people can buy introductory pieces and pieces to kind of get themselves started in the show? Comics, we're always a little bit easier, and I see what Jason's doing, but comics have always been cheaper even for kids. Yes, right now they're incredibly expensive, but you can still get things for $5, $6, $10 or whatever. Art is hard to find anything under 500.
Yeah. I'm sorry, guys. Wow. First of all, let me thank you all, because this is what I was hoping is this. I know that this topic sparks conversation, right? More than probably any other topic, right? And so I knew that it would make you guys be willing to come out and chat more. And you guys have done exactly that. Unfortunately for me, the problem is that I've fallen behind 20 minutes on comments. So I apologize. I'm going to have to try to skip some of them. So I really apologize, because you guys know I like to try to show as many of them as I can. But thank you so much. That's what's important is the conversation. I just I want to see them all, at least read them all, so I don't miss anything good. In case I have to,
just for Marcus, real quick, since he mentioned it, I did get a JR Captain America
there you
cover
go.
that did arrive this week and hasn't even been posted on CAF yet, but yes, arrived it, and luckily Barucci is not here yet. But I don't know, he's been fighting me for a lot of these Romita Captain America covers. He picked one up also this past week, and I think between him and I, we own 8 of the 10 covers from that run. But yes,
there you go. Well, congratulations, man. That's a pretty cool one for sure. That's for sure. That's a very nice one. Oh, and I wanted to say, I'm not going to put it on because I passed it a long time ago, but Carl, hopefully you're still listening and watching. Carl, we mentioned earlier, probably just before you stepped in to the chat, I mentioned that Alberto is actually scheduled to be doing an interview on Comic Art Live's channel in May. I think May 9th. Stay tuned, but in May. And so therefore, because of that, I didn't want to do the same. We didn't want to do the same things. I figured there was no point. So I said, let's do something completely different that, you won't be doing on May in your May appearance on Comic Art Live. And so that's why that's why tonight I'm not doing what I normally would do, which is to ask Alberto to tell us all about, how he got into comics, into art and all that stuff. So then he can keep all that for his next appearance at Comic Art Live. And as I said earlier, when I announced that, hopefully after that appearance, sometime later in this year, maybe he can come back and we'll do like a show and tell, where the whole show is mostly show and tell. And he can maybe tell us a brief background about, getting into art at that point. But I appreciate your interest, and I'm sure he does too. David, no, the answer is no. He's old school all the way. He's completely old school. And in fact, you know how on some pages, part of the script necessitates that the artist draw an identical panel, right? Let's say it could be 2 people staring each other down. And so they have to draw the exact same thing, right? So most of the time, you'll either stat it, right, in the old days, or you digitally just tell them, stat this panel and put that in this panel. Mike, I can only think of one time where he told them, stat this and put it here, and left it blank. He may have done it more than once. I can only remember one though, because he's that old school. He typically will just draw it all over again, the same panel over and over and over. He's old school. So yeah, I'll never say never, but I can't imagine he's ever going to touch digital.
I mean, one note, Ruben, because I see like a couple of people have mentioned too, is I think we're all used to seeing our art from the 80s and 90s with the lettering done by hand. And I think we all ultimately got used to lettering and word bubbles becoming stats or going away altogether, right? A lot of us have original art these days that is just the art without word balloons. And we got used to not having our panel pages with the lettering and all that stuff. So maybe that's in a way the first step towards us becoming accepting of pencil pieces coming with no physical inks anymore, and eventually all becoming digital, right? But I know I still personally love having pieces with the word balloons, the letters, and all that stuff, and that all went away. And we seem to be okay with it.
Yeah, I mean the thing about pencils only or inks on blue line is that at least with that, collectors can still, it's still original, right? The media being used, it's still original. And so I think that's what makes it far more accepting, to most collectors versus the whole monoprint type deal, because that's completely not original. It's just a complete print, So I do believe. Listen, 20 years ago, wow. First of all, 20 years ago, people were getting fooled by inks over blue line, including me. That's how I learned about it. That's how I learned about the process, by getting fooled buying some. And then when word started spreading about what it was, everybody, us traditionalists were like, nah, don't give me that. I don't want that. What's that? Because we hate, right? We want tradition. It's historic. It's always been done this way. We keep it that way, right? So I get it. But as you've seen over the last 20 years, it's become a market unto itself. There's plenty of people who are more than happy to buy inks on blue line or pencils only, So yeah, so I think it's because it's more accepted, because it's still original, as opposed to prints or whatever,
Yeah, and I think in the end, it's still the only physical piece of art that we have. I think sometimes, if there's only digital pencils and the only thing is a blue line inks, is still the only physical piece, and people are going to go for it. Like I said, I got that Ron Lim Captain America cover, and the only way to get it was pencils only, because the rest was digitally inked. But I'd rather have the only, I guess, real physical part of that cover that's available, as much as I usually like ink pieces better. So yeah.
So Marcus says the storytelling aspect of covers is also being stripped away by editorial mandate. Well, it's not being stripped away, Marcus. It's been stripped away for, like, I would like to say, I mean, I'd have to go back and look. I bet that would take too much time. I would say, like, at least 2 decades. I mean, since the 2000s, pretty much this millennium, it's all been the trend of the pinup cover, right? If it's multiple characters, then most of those covers are, the characters are all coming towards you. And if it's one character, it's the character posed or whatever, in a heroic pose or whatever. That's been happening. It's like movie poster style. That's been happening for like at least 20 years. I mean, that's the majority of stuff, right? Storytelling has been gone as the majority way of doing covers for a long time, man. Yeah.
I'm not sure when that started, but I think in my head, the first time that I really noticed it was Ultimate Spider-Man, and a lot of those covers back then, that seemed to be the first series where I noticed that the cover had absolutely nothing to ever do with interior, and it was all mostly Bagley doing covers with just Spider-Man doing weird pose. I don't know if it started before anything. I'm never paid attention to DC, so I don't know if that ever happened in the DC space, but yeah, I think ever since that, it started all being totally unrelated, and I'm personally not a big fan either. I remember buying comics because the cover told me what the issue was going to be about, and it got my attention.
Yeah. Hello, by the way, Kazra. Good to see you. Wow, two weeks in a row, and Nick is not here. So wow, you came in without Nick being here. I appreciate that. I don't know if you're still here, because of course, like I said, I'm 20 minutes behind on the comments. You guys are kicking ass with the comments. But yeah, most of us 20 years ago, right, didn't ever think that the color guides would ever be collected. Now, I will say, I always thought they were cool, although mostly for the covers. The cover color guides, I thought, this is a pretty cool collectible. I always thought that they deserved to be collected, and that I always thought there was potential for that market. But like Jason says here, and he has reached, oops, no, hold on. Here. Do you think that they would have grown in price if original art hadn't jumped to where it is now? And that's a good point. I think a lot of it is a trickle-down effect, right? Trickle-down economics, but not Reagan style. It's a lot of people get priced out, and they still want to keep collecting. And look at this. Oh, these color guides look pretty cool. And don't forget, they're still one of a kind. And there is original art on it, but the art is strictly the color art, as we know, But at least it's one of a kind, still completely unique. And it's part of the whole publishing process. So I think they're still cool and they're still absolutely potential for them, especially now with original art where it is today. Absolutely, you know. So Mike admits, look at this, Alberto. I spent 4K on 10 monoprints from an artist friend, Daniel Enriquez. Daniel genuinely will not work traditionally, okay, like a lot of guys. So I supported him and his chosen medium. Okay, that's good. Can be sold in the aftermarket. We'll see. Well, good. There you go. Well, that's all we're saying. We will see. Exactly. We don't know, right? Hopefully, you're not going to need to cash out of those prints for a long time. And by the time you do, hopefully there will be some semblance of an aftermarket, and it'll be good. I'm not against it happening. I'm just saying, for me, I'm just not interested in getting involved. That's all. And I think that's what a lot of us feel, right, Alberto?
Yeah, and maybe that will change in a year or two, or who knows how long, when that starts becoming the norm. Or maybe when I see a piece that really catches my eye. I just, up until now, have not seen necessarily anything, but I'm all about supporting the artist anyway. And I know buying the comic is not necessarily supporting the artist directly these days anymore, just with everybody being involved. But yeah, for sure, anything that we can do to support the artist is great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very true. Okay, comic art. Yeah, Chuck Arnold says agree. Comic art is an asset class. It has become. It's so bizarre to think of it that way, but it is. It is.
And I think a few people have mentioned as well, and I think Comic Art Boston just repeated again, is I think in the end, buy what you love and don't worry necessarily about other stuff. And yeah, back to what we're saying, if you love the work from an artist and all he does is digital work, if you love it, just buy it for sure. I know I don't buy any art with the intention of making money. Hopefully my art doesn't disappear and it's still worth something whenever I need it. But I think I'm 1,000,000% for just buying what you love and sticking to that as your collecting focus. And I think you're always going to be happy. And even if you lose money, you're always going to be happier because at least you have something you love and not something that you hate that you were just hoping to get money out of.
Yep. That's very, very well said. Very well said. Jeff Wright, by the way, new name for me, my friend. Thank you for dropping in and checking us out. And not only that, more importantly, thanks for tuning in and interacting with everybody. I think it's your first time here, but if I've forgotten and it's not, I really apologize. Please tell me. And I hope you're still here because it's like 25 minutes ago you posted that comment. But limited edition prints are common in the fine art world. We all know that. And I think we might get to the point where traditional comic artists sell originals at a high price and they then make prints at lower price too. Right. Like I don't know what to say other than anything's possible, right? Like we could get to that point. But I would say, if I had to guess, I would say it's less likely. And the reason is because there's this tradition of comic artists selling their originals. And so although the prices go up over time, I just don't believe that they would want to risk pissing off the fans by suddenly saying, hey, I'm making prints now, and those are affordable, but you can still buy my originals, but at much higher than I used to sell them to you for. I don't think it would. I know it wouldn't go over well, and because of that, I don't think they would try that. But would they still try some sort of thing where they still continue to sell their art and make prints of it? I believe that's very possible. Absolutely. Marvel One, number one Marvel fan. So most guys buying art in the 80s didn't have any way to resale and bought because they love the art. That's very true. Yeah, that's right. That was kind of the infancy of it. They didn't see a future value. But so you don't agree. But well, in a way, here's the thing though. It's not exactly true because they would buy it in the 80s typically at conventions, right? I mean, sure, you can say there was not an established aftermarket for the stuff, but if those guys wanted to, damn well as I do, at the next convention, they could certainly, if they needed to unload it, they could go back to that convention, and you know that those dealers, the guys who were selling the comic art back to them, they would buy it back from them. Now, would they buy it at a lower price than they paid? Probably, of course, but that's not the point, right? The point is they still had some sort of avenue with which to part with the stuff if they really wanted to, you know. But no, but I get your point. I still be trying to get every original piece of Hawkman on it. Kazu, okay, sorry. NFTs making the jokes. I'm gonna try to skip over the jokes as much as I can. Of course, Comic Art Boston, the voice of reason, Alberto. We should just buy what we love. Well, of course, that should always go without saying, right? And yeah, so Rom saying, so I'm with you. I was buying pages $50 to $100 on eBay 10 to 20 years ago and had no idea there was a market for original art. I just wanted the pages. But here's the thing. That's not really true, Rom, because you were buying them. You said it yourself. You were buying them on eBay. So in the last, not the last, but 10 years ago and then 20 years ago, right? So let's just call it from 2000 to 2015 even, right? 15 years. Come on. You were buying them all from eBay. So you know that there was an aftermarket. You may not have known about any dealers in existence, but just the fact that you were buying and seeing all this stuff on eBay means you know you could simply have turned around and sold that stuff on eBay. So come on, it's not accurate to say that you didn't know there was an aftermarket. Again, maybe you didn't know about dealers. You weren't aware of those guys because you were strictly a buyer on eBay. That's fine. I believe that if that's the case. But that very fact in itself shows that you had an aftermarket available to you. The very place you were buying them from, there was tons of art. So you could have just turned around and sold it there. So you did have a place you could sell them to. So, okay. I know it's got to be weird for you guys that I'm bringing up, I'm answering things that you said and probably don't remember 25 minutes ago. But okay, let me try to jump ahead. People do love price appreciation, Kazura. Although there's a lot of us, including me. I wish the stuff would stop going up. At least, for a while, for a certain period of time. It doesn't have to keep shooting up constantly. It's frustrating because it makes it harder to afford everything we want to afford, Hey, Mike, sorry to getting to you so late. Good to see you, sir. Case in point, those 5 to 6 vintage burn pieces on eBay last week came from some guy in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, right? Likely got it from burn at local cons. Right, so that ties into the conversation I was saying earlier about what Marcus pointed out, that there's probably still a lot of art out there, tucked away in people's drawers and whatnot, right? So absolutely, very much, sir. Good to see you, man. And yeah, exactly, CJ. Tons of stuff still around. That's right. A lot of it's still yet to be discovered, right? And let me see, Fiona. Hey, Nanya, welcome back, sir. Haven't seen you in a bit. Fiona Staples is leaving a fortune on the table. A lot of them are. Let's not just blame it on Fiona. And let's not pretend that she doesn't know what she's doing. Come on. If she did just the Saga covers traditionally, it'd be very lucrative. Yep. I'm 100% with you, Nanya. 100% with you. You would have to ask her. If you ever catch her at a con, ask her, hey, out of curiosity, I get why you do digital because of the speed thing, or maybe because you're just comfortable with it. But hey, just ask these artists when you get the chance at a con. Why not, at the very least, just do the covers traditionally to benefit from the the aftermarket? Ask them. But yeah, of course they're leaving a lot of money on the table. That's life. Comic Art Boston, physical original art will never go out of fashion. It'll always have an established historical niche. Absolutely. And best pieces will continue to command high prices, as is the case now. No, absolutely. Absolutely. That'll never change. And let me just make this one point. Alberto, you tell me what you think, if you agree or not. Even if tomorrow, again, a crazy hypothetical, starting tomorrow, right? All comic book art is done digitally, okay? My view is people who are only kind of fans of the newer stuff, they will take some time maybe, but they will get accustomed. They will go backwards and start seeking out art from the most modern they can find from when it was still done traditionally. That's that to me. People will seek out the traditional stuff always.
I don't necessarily know if people would go back just for the sake of having art, but I think the market in general, with the supply becoming a lot smaller and a lot more constricted, would definitely start seeing higher prices. But I don't think someone, a teenager or something that's starting to read comic books these days, if teenagers even read comic books anymore these days, if they would decide to go back 10 years ago to a Captain America piece from back then just to look for the art. As a matter of fact, I don't even think a bunch of people would even think when they look at I've surprised a lot of people that come over when I show them my art, because they never gave it a second thought to the fact that there's art associated with all the comic books that they read. So I don't know if that would necessarily go back. I think for a lot of us that are older, we will definitely start appreciating all that digital art more. It would become scarce, and it would definitely drive some of those prices up more. But I don't know if it would make people go back in time and try to get art from older. They would just not know that it even exists.
Okay. Well, not know that it even exists, though. I mean, in the online world, how could you avoid, finding out, because the hobby still exists. The hobby,
but I'm still people, when you go to comic conventions, many times they will go by and they all buy comics. They all know what it is, and you see sometimes them stopping by any of the art dealer booths, and they look at it like not sure what exactly it is, if they're posters, if they're copies of it, and not really associating that it's the art that the comics were shot from. So I think there's still a lot of people that are not going to even know that this art exists from the overall comic community, for sure.
Okay, good. Well, this is what I love. This is what I love. Dissenting opinions, the same opinions, whatever. A whole variety of opinions. Everybody just has to speak up and throw things out there, because it gives us food for thought, more things to consider. So I love that. So I appreciate that, Alberto. That's a good way to I don't know if that I necessarily agree, but it's interesting. It's interesting and certainly plausible, right? So absolutely. Neil, I think Marcus might have some. He can hook you up. And I wish so Comic Art Boston said, Alberto, there's a fine line between what is acceptable and what crosses the line. It's a little bit, okay. I'm catching up, guys. As you can see, it's I'm 18 minutes back now. What Ruben just said, unfortunately, that was 18 minutes ago. Sorry, my friend. Let's see. Let me catch up. I don't have to remember.
I don't know how you usually keep up with the chat, because I'm trying to keep an eye on it, and things are going so fast. No wonder you're 20 minutes behind. It seems like there's definitely a lot of people that have opinions on this topic, but
absolutely. This is why I wanted to do, because we've talked about this topic on some of my other shows and episodes in the past, and it just kind of comes up like that, and it becomes one of many topics, right? But that's why I thought, I've never actually done a whole episode about this whole topic, and because I said in the past, not only could we do a whole episode, we could do multiple episodes, especially under my format, which is everybody comes in and everybody gets a say, right? Because there's like dozens of us here together, and I want everybody to have their say. But look how quickly we fall behind on the comment. Okay, it's crazy. Yeah, it really is crazy. But I'm doing my best, guys. Hey, Aranga, good to see you, sir. Mr. Frank Miller's 300, cover artist. Started from Marvel to the Gems, and then yeah. That's okay. Is that when it started? The whole pin-up cover movie poster style thing. But so that's what I was saying. Wasn't that pretty much at the turn of the millennium, more or less, right? That's around that time.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of my recollection too. I think Ultimate Spider-Man at that line ended up kind of kicking off around that time period as well with Joe Q. So yeah, I think sounds about right.
Yeah, you're right, Rich. Pinup covers, they're so interchangeable with any issue. I know and like, look, I'm like anybody else. I like a good, cool pinup cover as much as any guy. When it has all these characters all coming at you. But my problem is if they've killed it, like you talk about beating a dead horse. I mean, it's at least 2 decades, like not 2 months or 2 years, 2 decades, where the majority of the covers are pinup style. It's like no storytelling. It's like, I'm so over it, it's so tiring. It's just, the old adage of too much of a good thing is not a good thing. That's what it is. That's how I feel, So there you go. What else do we got here? Let me try to skip over a few. Sorry, everybody. If you felt you put in a good comment, guys and gals, and I skipped over it, I didn't highlight it or attend to it, I really apologize. It's just I knew this hobby gets everybody talking, and I knew I'd be falling behind. I didn't think I'd fall this much behind though. So where are we? I know 3. Okay, so I'm about 13 minutes back now. I'm catching it. So Tariq says, if original art prices keep going up, then 20 years from now, the trickle-down effect should push monoprint prices up. Possible, just like color guides, possible. Yeah, and especially when you're talking 20 years from now, right? Absolutely possible. As long as the assumption that they are one-of-a-kind, right. That's the key. And that's when this topic has come up here before, that's what I've said, is that, and this is why I don't like it, and like the other people that don't like the idea of monoprint, it's for that particular reason. It's not just that it's not one of a kind, or sorry, I should say, it's not just that it's not original artwork, right? It's the fact that you are relying on the honesty of the artist, of every artist, to be honest for the rest of their lives. And unfortunately, as we all know, there are many comic book artists who have been very dishonest and screwed people over and stole money from commission collectors and all. We know all those stories. So that's the problem, is when times get financially tougher for an artist, and if that person is that type of dishonest person, right? If he happens or she happens to be somebody who had been doing monoprints for years, who's to say they're not going to like, oh, that was a really popular one, let me do another copy. Nobody's going to know, That's the problem, is to get into that market, you're doing it based on giving 100% confidence to all those artists that they are not going to replicate any one of those prints ever again. And I don't believe that that's going to happen. I believe somebody somewhere out there, artists, when times are tough financially, they'll do what they have to, or what they feel they have to, and that includes reprinting a monoprint that they know they could sell quickly.
And it's not just the artist, though, right, Ruben? I mean, just like you were saying earlier when we first started talking, it's all going to depend on the resale market for a lot of that stuff. You can trust the artist, but how do I know Joe Schmo on eBay saying that he's selling the digital copy, the only artist proof for a particular piece, that he's not going to sell it to 28 different people, right? It starts becoming a lot harder to track the provenance of a lot of those things if people start reselling it. And I personally have not seen anybody reselling any artist proofs yet, and I don't know what will happen.
Right.
Yeah,
totally. We're on the same page with that. Thank you for letting me know, Jeff. Lurking for a while. That's cool. Glad you finally decided to join all the other guys and gals and speak up, man. That's what makes it so much more fun. And you're just a province away in Toronto. Awesome. That's awesome. I can't believe though that you're in Toronto and you've, unless you never said hi to me and I never said, we never didn't know each other, but I can't imagine that happening, that you were not part of the you may not even be aware of that comic art collectors gathering that Jeff Singh puts on every year. But if you know anything about that, let me know. And if you don't, you know what, if you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe email me here and I'll tell you more privately about it. Okay, rubenthecollector@gmail.com. Okay, so yes, jumping back into the comments here. Oh man, there's so many. Okay, I love seeing other guys pop in. Hey, Derek, what's up, man? Are folks at their limit with 7 to 8 auctions, art sales, events, all in the same day? Okay, so you know what? I love that you brought this up, because I was going to start the show with something related to this, but since I allowed Alberto to take somebody's question before I even started my little spiel, and it's just been rocking and rolling ever since then, I want to take this. So let me just quickly say, and this is going to probably put me back another 20 minutes, but okay. So here's the thing: the impetus for tonight's show, other than the fact that it's always a very interesting topic that everybody in this hobby always talks about, anyways, right, privately or whatever. It's because in the last 3 to 4 months, a lot of my friends in the hobby have been reaching out to me, like they've been doing for years. Okay, they reach out to me, they say, "Hey man, check this out. Look at this." And they provide me links to auction results, right? Of something that just closed at an auction. Now, for years and years and years, the intent of those people is to just show me, like, wow, what do you think of this craziness? Look how high it's gone again, right? But in the last 3 to 4 months, the vast majority of people who have reached out to me to do that and say, hey, check this out, the majority of them, the reason they're doing it is because they're pointing out pieces that they feel have sold for surprisingly less than those pieces should have sold for or had been selling for in recent months and years, And so I just wanted to say that I think the reason that those people were sort of pointing these things out to me was because they were trying to make the point that, hey, so what do you think? So, is the market, the bubble? Is that bubble bursting? Or is it going to burst soon? Are we finally going to have that crash, that all the naysayers have been talking about for the last several years? And so I get it. I get why they think that, because they see these, oh, look at this example, that example, this example, that example, right? And I just wanted to bring this up because it does affect the state of our hobby. And I wanted to say, first of all, I did in pretty much all of the cases, maybe there was an exception or two, but in pretty much most of the cases, if not all of them, I agreed with my friends. I agreed. I was like, wow, that is pretty low, compared to like usual or what I would have expected it to go for. However, I, as a lot of you guys know, because we've talked about this on my channel before, I am a proponent and have long since been a proponent of the idea that this market is real. This market has legs, and it has very, very strong legs for the foreseeable future. Now, what I would say is, and again, I think this goes along with the idea of, there's an exception to every rule. What I will say is that all these pieces of art that sold for less than they had been selling for, that people were pointing out to me, how do I explain that? Some of the guys were like, well, why would it suddenly be doing that? And there's like, it looks like it's a bit of a trend, right? And I said, look, there could be many reasons, right? You never truly know all the reasons. But the one reason that stands out to me is you look at the main economy out there, okay? The economy out there still, to me, seems pretty strong. But look at real estate. What's happening in the real estate market? Over the last year, and literally less than a year, right, measured in months, literally months, we have gone in a market where interest rates have gone from next to nothing, 2%, 2.5%, whatever the heck they were, 8 months ago, to like they hit 7 recently, right? 7%. And then they cool down a little bit somewhere. I don't watch it every day, but somewhere in between 6 and 7, whatever, But my point being that the original art hobby, it's a pretty good representative microcosm of the overall general population out there, right? And if people out there who have been buying homes in the last several months, who decided to get in on a variable interest rate type mortgage, right, at 2.5%, 3%, let's say, and who now are because the rates skyrocketed so much in just a matter of months. You think about it. Some people may have been paying a couple of grand per month for their mortgage, and all of a sudden now they're like this. They're like, oh God, choking, trying to stay afloat because they can't pay $3,800 or $4 grand, $4,200, whatever the hell they have to pay now, right? They budgeted that new house purchase at $2 grand a month, and all of a sudden they're scrambling, wondering if they're going to be able to keep their home now. So I just wanted to say that for that reason alone, you best believe that there are people in that situation who bought homes, who are comic art collectors, took a variable interest rate mortgage, who are now really struggling to pay that mortgage, and because of that, obviously, have to step out of the market, the original art market, right? They can't be dropping $5 grand, $10 grand, $500, whatever the hell the price is. They can't afford to be spending a penny at this point because they're trying to stay afloat on their home. So for that reason alone, that could explain, just by itself, that could explain why these examples of these pieces going for less than they have been, and among other reasons. But that's just what I wanted to put out there, and I just wanted to finalize by saying that I still believe that this is more exceptions to the rule. I still think the market's strong, and I expect that it's going to continue going strong. Again, with little spurts of what we're seeing with certain things that just go a little bit lower than they, or even a lot lower than they normally do. But what I'm saying is that these will be exceptions. They still represent a tiny fractional amount of the overall number of pieces actually being sold in any given auction, on any given website, on any given day. So those are my thoughts on that. Alberto, your thoughts?
I totally agree that I think it's definitely the exception to the rule. But and I think George was just mentioning that as well, is I think there's more art available than ever, or even if there isn't, it's easier than ever for us to get the information and find out about art being available for sale than it's ever been before, right? So I think we can easily compare prices of art these days. We can reach out to people much more easier, and that's going to make it, in some exceptions, is going to reduce the prices, right? I mean, when I started the hobby, before I started attending all these shows, I always thought, oh, a Mike Nola Hellboy sketch at a con, that's going to be awesome. And they were so rare, and people were selling them for thousands of dollars. Now, after attending for years a lot of these shows, I mean, going to Duel and Dealers, how many of those have Mike and Anthony shown over the years? There's like hundreds of them. And it's like, well, maybe they're not as rare as I once thought. The same thing for a lot of these pages. Many times it would be like, well, I might never see another cover by this artist. And as I start seeing that it's not just comic art fans, but if I start looking at Heritage, eBay, Hakes, Comic Link, Comic Connect, all sorts of places, there is a lot more art available. But I think overall things are going up more than they are going down, which is bad personally for me. I'm still mostly a buyer than a seller, and I'm still trying to accumulate pieces, but I think we're always going to find exceptions. And if you look at each piece that has gone down, you can probably find that reason for it. Some of it has been, sometimes a piece ends up being on Thursday night on Heritage instead of on Sunday, and people are holding off because they're interested in some of the pages that are coming later in the auction, and they don't want to commit a lot of money right away. Sometimes it's just purely timing. There's been some pieces that I've passed on Comic Link before, because 3 days after the Comic Link auction ended, there was going to be a Heritage auction that I was more interested in some pieces on, and I didn't want to commit the money. So I'm sure other people are doing that just because of the flood in the market. And sometimes I've ended up missing out on the Comic Link piece and then the Heritage piece, because by the time it went to Heritage, the price went a lot higher than I wanted to, and I could have gotten the first piece cheaper. But I think there's a lot of reasons why a lot of these things are sometimes seeing some exceptions in the OA market. But I think overall, it's hard to believe that there's a bubble that's about to burst, because I still feel like every auction there's higher and higher pieces.
Right. No, well said, man. Well said. Absolutely. I think the key takeaway, I think, from both of us really is that we're on the same page in terms of thinking that it is still, we see some of these things, go for lower, whatever, people point them out to us or whatever, but it still is the exception to the rule, until we get to that point where we are seeing like literally every second or third or even fourth piece going for like, wow, another one that went so low. Oh my God, another one. Oh, and another one. You know what I mean? Like, until we get to the point where it's like that many, I have no fear that this market is suddenly going to be collapsing, crashing. I don't believe in the whole bubble theory. It's not the stock market. There are very big differences. There are a lot of similarities to the stock market, but there are some huge differences that will always keep our market from ever truly crashing. It cannot crash the way you think of a market crashing, like stock market or whatever, or Beanie Babies, whatever. It's not built to crash like that. It can't. So,
and I think because of the way the market is, right? Ultimately, these are one of a kind of piece. I know if I ever saw the market soften, me or most collectors would probably end up not putting a piece for sale and manually controlling the supply of pieces, right? To make sure that, because nobody's going to put a page that they bought for 50,000 up for sale for 30,000 unless they're in a very dire situation. That again would probably be an exception. But I think this hobby, we will control the supply ourselves to make sure that crash never happens.
Okay, perfect timing, and not only is it perfect timing because you not only because of what you just said, Alberto, but because being behind where I am, it just so happens that I'm coming to a really interesting couple of comments from Larry. Okay, so Larry thinks that a quote unquote crash, putting it in, let's all be clear, he's putting it in quotes and quotations, is inevitable. He thinks it happened in our hobby before. It happened to comic books. It happened in animation art when I was a retail dealer, but the crash here will not be what you expect. It's not as though art will fall in value. It's just that it will sit there with no buyers. The Mona Lisa doesn't lose value. It just doesn't sell. Let's not even get into that. We can't compare the Mona Lisa to comic art, but that's not, I get what you're saying, Larry. First of all, I take umbrage. That's a great word. With your comment, your statement about, I believe it was the original one here. You say in your second line, it's happened in our hobby before. It has not happened in our hobby before. Tell me, please, when did it crash? Because now we're probably going to get into semantics. Okay, I know a crash didn't happen. You're probably going to say something where something was slower to sell because the buyers were not there. I'm assuming you're kind of saying that. But let's I'm behind on the comments, so I'm going to get to your response now that you're typing in the process of typing out now. I'm going to get to that only minutes later. So let's just say this: it's very possible. But what I've always said, what I've been saying for years, is that was for me kind of like what I thought was the worst case scenario, if you will, right? Where I thought, okay, worst case scenario, things just stagnate, right? Things stop going up because people have to pull back and not jump into the market anymore. But that's the whole point is everybody who keeps talking about, the naysayers, most of them, let's be honest, Larry, most of them, if not all of them, are talking about a crash in which the value of all the art goes down to some extent, right? And I think what you're saying is more the truth, which is I don't see that happening. I see a potentially at some point something where, again, whether it's real estate, the overall economy, whatever causes it, or any confluence of factors that causes it, I could see that things slow down, like in a worst case scenario. But I don't see, other than examples, exceptions to the rule. Other than exceptions to the rule, which there will always be, right? I don't see the overall broader market. In other words, the majority of pieces in the market have all come down now. I don't see that happen. I just don't. But I'll catch up and we'll see what you say in your later comments. Unless you're up to date, Alberto. If you are, you can certainly tell me what he's saying. And
again, it's hard to
keep up. Right?
And I don't know how you do it during these chats. I think I found a much respect for how you manage to do this every week.
Because like I say, what makes it harder? It's in these types of shows where when it's like when the topic is really meant for everybody to get in on it, and this particular topic, hey, like I say, everybody's passionate about this hobby. So we're passionate about where it's going, where we think it's going, or where it's been, So it's I expect a lot more, activity happening. So,
and I think again, we're going to find exceptions to the rule, and a lot of us are going to be able to say, the market's crashing. Look at this, and this, or look at this particular artist or whatever. Especially in today's day and age, with all the information, again, the moment an artist says something on social media that people don't agree on, people turn against them too, and that artist becomes all of a sudden impossible to sell or whatever. We see a lot of that stuff, but what I don't see the hobby personally crashing. I think we'll see hopefully situations where art doesn't double every year, which seems like lately that's what we're seeing, and dealers and people that are selling their pieces will not be asking twice what they really should be asking for in today's day and age. And hopefully that will come down a little bit. But it's amazing how many pieces you still see where people will offer you with 3 times what they paid for 6 years ago, and they try to get you for that. I know a few folks in the chat were in there when there was a Rick Levins Captain America cover that probably would have been a couple $1,000 not that long ago, and I went a little bit crazy because I didn't have a Rick Levins cover and I offered $6,000, but the guy was expecting $9,000, and that to me felt totally crazy for that. I mean, I don't expect people to leave money on the table, so I can totally understand people asking an arm and leg and trying to make as much money as they can. But I think some of those things are just kind of going to slow down in the rate that they grow, but it's not going to crash.
Yeah, I agree. Liquidity is always good for any market. Absolutely, Scott, for sure. Okay. Is that Ken Golden getting in the game? I think we have room for other formats. Yeah, for sure. Look at Kazuras. I just emailed Fiona with an offer to buy the tablet she used to make all the Saga art. The tablet's going to be worth the big money now. So, Mark, before one hangs art on the walls, it helps if they already own their own walls. Of course, if you've got your, your home situation settled, it definitely, absolutely helps. Absolutely. And what else do we have here? If the Perez shirt can go for hundreds, tablets can go for thousands. You never know, man. I wouldn't put anything past in the collectibles market, I have never in my life said, I can't believe that sold so low. Well, I'm telling you, people have been telling me that, man. What can I say? And it is true. Like I said, I agreed with them. Not so low as in it's so cheap now. It was still ridiculously overpriced. I mean, compared to what it might have been selling for 5 years ago, But that's just in context, Scott. Compared to like recent months and what it was expected to sell for. Yeah, those pieces sold for less. And you can't eat art. That's very true. But you can't eat guns either, my friend. or gold. Dino says that demand is less than the supply, especially for high quality. Sure, so prices will keep rising. Yeah, we just hope it's at a slower pace. Would be nice, right? Never. You can eat Sharon's cakes as art or this highway, but you can burn it, yeah, to stay warm. Exactly. What else do we got here? Let's see. Yeah, exactly. Look, Marcus, you and I are on the same page. We know that. You've heard me say this on my shows like at least 2 or 3 times, right? It's 201, 209, and then again COVID, right? So that's 3 worldwide negative impact events. Didn't crash our market. So if that kind of stuff can't crash our market, I just don't see what could. So like I said, the worst I see is I could see certain things, like I said, people struggling with their own finances, with their real estate problems, whatever. I can see a slowdown, certain things dropping for a while, whatever, but eventually everything will revert to the mean and continue its upward climb, So yeah, that's my view, and Alberto agrees, and I think most of you guys do too, although I don't see specific comments that sort of address that. But I think in the past, most of us have agreed. So maybe 2001, post 9/11, original art hobby flatlined and declined, but only for about 6 months. Yeah, exactly. And look, Dino, people always like to bring up when I'm like, when? Tell me when, right? And usually people bring up, oh, well, remember the Kirby collection that Christopher sold? And it's like, okay, but that's not the overall market. That's one section of the market, literally one artist, right? Who a collector dumped a whole ton of art from that one artist on the market. And it was at a time where the market was still in its infancy. Of course, there was way more supply than demand. So prices dropped and stayed soft for a while. But here we are 20 years after that event. And those $400 New Gods pages are $4,000, right? And the Kirby FF pages that were 1,000 are like 27,000. Like, come on, right? Like, history is on our side. That's what I'm saying. History, there is precedent. History shows us plenty of negative impact events, and it hasn't really done anything bad to the hobby. We're all still here collecting and spending more than we ever have. Right, Alberto?
It's funny you mentioned that, Ruben. If you scroll down a couple comments, Marcus referred exactly to that.
Yeah.
Tony Christopher Kirby art apocalypse.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah, exactly. It was right. I didn't even notice it. It was just right below. Exactly, guys. That's what I'm saying. So, I mean, that's cool. Like, if you guys still believe something's going to happen, voice your opinion. I want to hear it. I just want to hear the reason why, because I'd like to debate it if I think that the reasons makes no sense, but if it might make sense, and I'll happily admit that, okay, possible, it's plausible, but I just don't see it. I just don't see it happening. So there are art dealers out there in the high-end stuff that control the prices of certain artists' work. They have a need to keep prices high. I mean, I don't want to get into that whole thing about, market manipulation, whether we believe it's manipulated or not, because that's a whole other show all on its own.
No, but I think that ties in way to what I was mentioning, right, Ruben, which is with art being one of a kind, and yes, we all know there's plenty of pages out there in the world, but I think us as collectors would probably control the supply to the extent that we wouldn't let, just like dealers might control the price of certain artists' work. I know if I saw prices crashing, I definitely would hold off on selling any pieces until the price went higher. So I think automatically we would see less pieces on Heritage because nobody wants to sell pieces for less than they bought it from, and the supply would end up being restricted to the point where demand increases and people spend money again. So I think some dealers definitely do that control the prices, but I think we all do, in a way, do the same thing, where if we're going to lose money. We're not going to sell pieces, and we're going to wait until the market gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a general reaction. I don't think anybody in this chat would sell unless they were in a dire situation, a piece for less than they bought it for.
Right. No, I agree. And Murdoch, yeah, you're basically following up the whole commentary about the Tony Christopher collection selling off the Kirby stuff, you know? Yeah, like of course, I've never denied that an artist's market can certainly correct, of course. But we're never here talking about an artist's market. We're always here talking about the overall market as a whole, right? And what happens to original art as a whole, what happens to our collections and to all the art that still is out there waiting to be purchased or not, you know? So that's the thing.
And I think some folks, not to give you a hard time, Ruben, but folks that are collecting based on one particular artist, for example, are probably more likely to face some of that stuff, right? Your love for Mr. Grummet, yes, if anything were to happen in there, you're probably more at risk than other people that have a more varied collection or whatever. But I think overall the hobby would be just fine, like you said. My first page that I bought, that Ethan Van Sciver page, after everything that happened with Comicsgate and all that stuff, I know a lot of people decide to stay away from him, and I'm sure that affected the price of those pages. And anything Scott Adams Dilbert art, I don't know if there's any out there. I'm sure with what happened a couple of weeks ago, that killed the market for his art. Those things are going to happen eventually, but I think in general, if you block out the noise of some of those exceptions, it's going to be okay.
Exactly. I totally agree there. And Larry's dropping a little bit of historical knowledge, which I'm aware of. And I like that he brings it up. Okay, animation art was all the rage in the 80s. I'm aware of that. I wasn't around noticing it, but in retrospect, going backwards, because I'm a bit of a pseudo historian about the hobby, I'm fully aware of that. Well before comic art arose, Sotheby's and other auction houses had big auctions with sales and drawings, and then poof, gone when the crash happened. So there's a couple of things I want to say about that, Larry. And I actually wasn't aware that you were into dealing animation back in the day. So that's an interesting bit of information about you. So thanks for mentioning that. I just wanted to say, when I first sort of discovered animation cells, I got to tell you, and I don't mean this to disparage anybody who has any and collects them and whatever, okay? I'm just going to tell you my feelings, my personal feelings of how I've always felt about animation art. While it is cool for me, it has always been cool to see something like an animation cell from, let's say, one of my favorite cartoons like Snow White, okay? I love Snow White, probably my favorite animated feature of all time. I love that. But a lot of it has to do with not only because it's my favorite, but because it's from so long ago. So it's the historical aspect to it, okay? But the thing about the cell market, I always thought was, like, I always felt, I'll be honest, I always felt like I don't know why people would ever get into this whole cell thing, because at least with comics, comic art, there's continuity in, you know, numbering of the title, numbering of the page, you know where it's from, you can prove it. But with the animation market, I think the thing that always was hurtful to it from a collector getting into it standpoint was the fact that, you know, there's 24 frames per second. So for every second of animation, there's 24 different cells, most of them looking very identical to each other. None of them are properly numbered. That would be, you know, numbered in a sequential way that would make it very easy to know where in the sequence this one fits, and, you know, where are the other ones, right? Where are all the other ones? So that's the thing for me, is that it just seemed to me like a mugs game, the whole animation thing. And to me, there was way too much supply than there would ever be demand. That was my view of it. And not easy to collect in the sense of, again, following the continuity, the way you can follow comics and comic art. And that's why I always felt that wouldn't be a viable collectible for the, like, that would grow well into the future. And so all I have to say to that, other than what I've already said, is the fact that you said it yourself, 1980s, it was hot. And then the market, right, blew up. Right. But here, how can you really fairly compare the animation market, which was only hot for that decade, to this market, which we can at least fairly say it's been hot and growing exponentially ever since the advent of the internet? So at least from going back to the advent of the internet with eBay, let's say 1995 onwards, we have now 28 years, right? Almost 3 full decades of historical precedents. And all we've seen is this, the train chugging up the hill. Like, that's all we've seen. So that's why I'm saying I don't believe that it's just because, I don't think it's a fair comparable. I don't think the animation market has anything to do with what would happen in comic art. What do you say, Alberto?
Yeah, I think, and even over the years, right, the difference that I've seen is you've seen sales offered as giveaways or things sometimes, many times, where, hey, subscribe to us and you can get animated cell from one of the Disney movies, or you can find them much more readily available. I think, again, because there is a lot of animated cells per movie, right? If there's 24 frames per second, you can get that a lot more easily. To me, it's incredibly cool. I've always wanted to get some animated cells. I've just never pulled the trigger necessarily because I focus on other stuff, but I do feel like they're more accessible, readily available, whereas I have not seen anywhere anything where subscribe for us and we'll send you a piece of original art from a comic book. So I think over the years, it's just been easier to accept or to see animation cells that I don't think people think of it as scarce necessarily as they are. Now, I don't know the market enough. I'm sure any of those grails of animation are going to cost a lot more, but there's definitely been a lot more cartoons over the years than there have been comics, I feel like. So there's probably a much higher supply than demand, for sure.
Yeah. Congrats, Neil. Congrats on that, getting that cover. No, exactly. I absolutely feel the same way. Yeah. And I just don't see much of a parallel between animation art and comic book art, even though some of the characters could be similar or same or whatever. I just don't see many parallels, honestly. It's just our hobby is its own monster. It was tiny at one point. It's not tiny anymore. It's really well established now.
I'm sure the parallels are going to continue as they move much more digitally as well. They probably move digitally a lot sooner than.
Oh, you mean the animation field?
Yeah, the animation cells. I'm sure they move digitally a lot earlier than we're seeing with comics, for sure. So from that perspective, they're probably ahead of us in there. And I don't know if that will affect the market for sure. But
okay, so Larry, get this. So Larry, I love that Larry's really adamant about this, but I mean, I don't know. Can anybody tell me? Does anybody, myself and Alberto, we haven't agreed with Larry's view on this. Does anybody agree with what Larry's saying, with any of the points he's making? So okay, the parallels between animation art and comic art are many. I'm not sure I agree. When production art runs, when production art runs low as demand spiked, limited edition cells were created. Okay, much like all the prints now being created. But you mean prints now being created of comic art? Is that what you mean? I think. Okay, I guess the easiest way for me to say this, Larry, and again, just my one guy's opinion. Okay, I'm not saying I'm definitely right here. I have always believed that the animation market, okay, particularly the one from back in the 80s, I always believed that was never truly a market. Rather, it was a short-term fad. I believe fad is the correct way to the correct terminology to assign to the animation market. I think, to me, I always saw it as something that, yeah, it could be popular for a short while, but I never expected it to really, like I said, grow and continue the way that original comic book art has, for those reasons that I mentioned earlier. But that's just my feeling. Anybody else step in and tell me what you think?
Yeah, I'll say, Larry, to be honest, I don't know enough about the animation sales market because it's not something that I've been always that interested with. It just seemed like in general it seemed more readily available, and maybe it's just wishful thinking, and we've got our blinders on because we're part of this hobby and we don't want to think of it crashing. So you may be 100% right, and there are more parallels than we think. But yeah, I honestly just don't know necessarily enough of it to really argue as convincingly as Ruben seems to be in terms of his opinion about it. I just don't feel like it would
Larry does make, and I appreciate this, Larry, very much so, because of course it's not my market, right? So I forget about these things. I'm aware of it, but I forget. And so he makes the reminder for us that cells were not nearly as plentiful as we think, because, and now listen, I also can't say that I'm going to believe 99% is the accurate number, but I do remember that, yes, of course, a lot of the cells were destroyed. Some of them were just used to be, painted over for the next feature and whatnot or whatever. Okay, I mean, that's fine, and I'm willing to I accept that they're not nearly as plentiful. That's fine. But like I say, it's not even so much how many exist for me. For me, it's, as I say, my main turnoffs is that you just don't know what's out there. With a comic art page, oh, it's page 3 from issue 4. You know it, right? You know that in all likelihood, because of the history of our hobby, we know that all the other pages from that story most likely exist, and are out there somewhere, With animation, it's just so much up in the air. It has always seemed like, where is this stuff? Like, and again, because they're not numbered, right? They're not numbered, and we don't really know how many did get destroyed or painted over. All those factors, to me, they've always been the biggest turnoffs in terms of collecting it. And that's, yeah. So that's why I feel that a lot of comic art collectors don't make that transition to say, hey, maybe I'll get into, maybe I will get into also buying animation art. I mean, I know some guys in comic art who have purchased a few animation cells here and there, but it's not something that they're going to collect per se, So I don't know. But, we've been going at this quite a long time, Larry. I'm just curious, do you have a base point that you want to make in terms of animation versus comic book art? Is there something that you're trying to say about it? Is it that you think that because animation had its day and then sort of went the way of the dodo, you still feel that can and will happen to original comic art? Is that what you're trying to say? Let me know. And in the meantime, I will move on with other comments. Started moving digitally late 90s, early 2000s. Yeah. Thank you, George. Good to see you, by the way. Sounds good, Neil. Appreciate it. Real hardcore animation ended after Dumbo. Okay. As far as Disney is concerned. Okay. Okay. So Carlos, what's up, Carlos? Good to see you, man. That's not really a comment that I don't even know. You're not alone in feeling how he feels, Carlos. I don't know if you can be a bit more specific. Let me go on and see. I know what Larry's talking about because I was into it as well and I saw what happened. Okay. Neil, it's very nice. And about okay. Oh, sorry, that's personal talk. Animation went computer. Limited editions didn't fill the gap. It's the same here with digital. Okay. The prints are being made by scammers. I don't know. I don't want to get into that. The number of prime cells, the ones a collector would want, were very low. I mean, that I could, I could go for. I could get on board with that. So you're seeing the same pattern. Okay. Hey, look, like I said, we all have our opinions, right? I mean, I could be wrong. Alberto could be wrong. You could be wrong. Who knows what's going to happen? But it's cool. It's cool that we share these views and these thoughts. We'll see what happens. We can only see what happens and sort of talk about it every now and then and see where we are every so often. And when the vast majority of animation cell creations went overseas, it was hard to find here in the U.S. Okay, I'll buy that. How many Picasso collectors are there? I imagine it's a very small group, of course. As the prices of original art rise, this may end up being a hobby for a few hundred rather than many thousands. That's also very possible, although I will say not in our lifetime. I think that's fair to say, probably not in our lifetime.
Well, but I think that's kind of the point that I think I made earlier today, right? That I think the barrier to entry into this hobby is definitely becoming tougher as the prices have gone up. Can you still find some affordable art? Yes. Can you still find affordable art that actually has the characters that you care about? That's becoming harder and harder to find pieces under $500, $1,000, couple $1,000. And I think, yes, we're definitely going to potentially see, the hobby ends up being less people than other hobbies for sure.
Mm-hmm. So Jason says the masses will have to find something else. And will the digital generation even care when they can just download an image? Well, I don't know about the future, but to that I will say about that last comment, I will say with the whole NFT thing, I mean, you would think nobody would have bought them because you could just download the image and keep it on your computer for free. But some people bought them. Again, still the minority. I still think it's a product that's, not worth spending money on. But it's still in existence so far. We'll see what happens. It's still fairly new, right? So we'll see what happens with that. Neil says that I think the blinders and the no, it can't happen attitude is in some minds. Of course. But I'm a realist, so I don't have blinders on. I don't. Like I said, I just truly believe that we can have a correction. By correction, I mean, again, some stuff sells for lower, but across the board, not really. And even if it was across the board, I think the overall, the percentage drop that would could occur is negligible to the point where, compared to how much it's all gone up over the last several years, it would be sort of negligible. Don't forget, guys. Even when you have a 25% drop in something, it sounds scary, right? And it is, right? It could be. It's like, wow, I lost a quarter of what I just paid for it yesterday. Ooh, right? But for everybody who bought it not yesterday, but a few years ago, they're already up several %. So to those people, dropping 25% still has them up at least a couple of %. You know what I mean? So it's all relative to really how much it's already gone up, before it finally falls a little bit, And Larry says the animation industry was much larger than the comics industry. Sure, it has the same appeal for collectors who grew up with their favorite cartoons, yet it still died. I don't know, man, but I just don't see. I see similarities in the product, but a cartoon is not something that you go into the cartoon store and watch once per week, multiple cartoons of your favorite artists, right? So there may be parallels, but there are also so many differences. And it's those differences from the comic book market and comic art market that I think make all the difference in why I say I just don't see the same thing happening, But that, again, that's just my view. And again, I'm not predicting a crash in prices, just a period of time where nothing moves. And again, I just want to reiterate that I did earlier, when you made that point earlier, Larry, I agree that that could happen. I'm willing to concede that that could happen. Listen, I actually wish, I've been on record as saying I wish it would happen. I wish things would just stagnate for at least a year or two. So Alberto and I can buy comic art at like prices that we can expect rather than prices that we don't know what they're going to be a month from now. And the next time the next piece we want comes up, oh my God, how much is it going to be this time? Every single time you find the piece that comes up, it's higher than the last time it sold, So that's it. I mean, I think a lot of us would be very happy about that, because ultimately, if that happens, it doesn't affect our collections, our net worth, or whatever, right? And those types of slowdowns, as you know, Larry, they're always temporary. Eventually, and as long as the American economy continues on its, quest upward and growing as the leader of the world's leader, so too will comic book art. That's my view. Alberto, what do you say? You look like you want to say something.
No, I was actually just looking at a point that Oranga made, which is, yes, what's going to happen in, let's say, 30 years? I think all of us right now are buying art, a lot of it for nostalgia. And I think that's what's driving a lot of the prices these days, right? It's people that read comics in the 80s, 90s, or 2000, and we're now at that prime because we remember those things. In 30 years, as a lot of this art moves digital, is anybody really going to give a crap, honestly, about a 90s burned page that they were not reading as they were growing up, or any of that stuff, right? So what's going to happen as those people as we age out in this hobby? And that is a good point. And maybe that's a reminder to make sure that I don't wait too long before I dispose of all my collection. But yeah, I definitely think that it's going to lose a lot of its relevancy in 20, 30 years for sure, as a lot of us are getting older.
Interesting. Neil, I just want to say Larry's always welcome. I actually, Larry, I the next time we do a State of the Hobby address, would love you to be my friend in the chat, in the studio with me rather than in the chat. Let me know if you'd be interested. And yeah, I'd like to revisit this, twice a year, once per quarter, whatever the case may be. It's like I said, everybody always has opinions on this, so we could do this fairly often, So he says, just saying, for all those who think comic art is bulletproof, think about comics, think about back issues, think about the movie industry, think about animation. Okay, but again, and I don't want to belabor this point. You say think about comics, but really, what about comics? I mean, yes. The new comic book market has been struggling for 2 decades plus. But back issues have never been stronger, right? They've never been more valuable than they've ever been. They're more valuable now by far than they've ever been. I mean, that you mentioned earlier, Larry, that hobby or whatever, that business was sort of down or whatever. It had crashed. So I'm assuming you were talking about back in the 90s when the publishing part of the business had crashed. But as far as a collectible goes, right? As collectibles go, I mean, back issues of comics more valuable than they've ever been. So I can't, I don't know if you're referring to that or the new comics. I agree with you if you're talking about publishing, right? The brand new stuff for sure. And let me see. What else do we got here? A lot of people talking amongst themselves. Alberto, it's so funny that I was happy because I was going to say, oh look, I'm within 6 minutes of catching up to the latest comments, and yet I can see the gap of my scroll bar to the bottom is still huge. It's like that's still a lot of comments in 6 minutes, man. Oh my God. Okay. Even today, the market, the number of buyers is increasingly a mile wide, but an inch deep. That's interesting. Okay. Let me see. Oh, and there's Aranga. Yeah, that's what you were saying. The bigger poems that were the next generation of art collectors is where is the next generation coming from? Well, we've talked about this. I don't know if it was. I certainly talked about it. I don't know if it was on this channel or on Comic Art Live. But those people, I'll tell you where they're coming from. They're coming from the same place that all the other generations came from before that. So if you can answer that question, then you have your answer. They will come just like they always have come. Whether it's people like us in our generation talking to, random younger people in next generations. It's always passed down. People always love history, especially in collectibles. People love the history of collectibles, okay? And I've made this point many times, okay? Back in the 80s, I guarantee you there were people saying, oh, who's going to want this Golden Age crap when we're all gone, right? The Golden Age stuff was already 40 years old at that point in the 1980s. 40 years old, already more than a generation. It's a generation and a half, okay? Did the Golden Age comic market die out? No. Did it explode? Yeah. It continued growing along with all other comics, just more and more and more. And those books are more revered now than they've ever been. They're more valuable than they've ever been. Why? Nobody alive today was buying those things off the stand. So you can't use the nostalgia excuse. But I'll tell you what, you can actually use nostalgia, but just not in the way most people use it, which is, oh, when I was a kid, my memories of when I was a kid. Okay, but when you were a kid, the Golden Age was already long gone, right? Okay, but what happens is people still have nostalgic feelings for the characters are above all else. The characters, in my opinion, are more important than anything else. We have nostalgic feelings for these characters that we loved, okay? And as long as we have that, you will always be able to find a new generation of people who get into comics, they read comics, then they'll find out that there's this thing, oh, the original art can be purchased, and people will be attracted to the different styles of art. Just like today, nobody was born, during the Golden Age of comics, but there's plenty of people dabbling in it, collecting it, speculating in it, because they're attracted to the vibrant covers or whatever, right? Whatever the reason is. Right? But the bottom line is Golden Age, Silver Age, it's still being highly collected. It's worth more than it's ever been. So why would you think that we are the last generation to hold on to this comic art? Go ahead.
Yeah, I do think that the number of those collectors, though, is dwindling down, though. I think this is where the conversation goes, where instead of thousands of collectors, it ends up being hundreds of collectors. Yes, there's definitely going to be people interested, but even if you ask the general collecting community in general and you ask how many people really focus on Golden Age versus Silver Age versus Modern Age or whatever, yes, you're always going to have those collections, but I think the numbers are going to ultimately dwindle down. Now, if those people have enough money, that doesn't mean price crashes, but it's definitely going to be a smaller community, I think, in general. Just like we're going to see less people joining in. It might be people with more money and they keep the hobby afloat and the prices up, but I just think it will be less people ultimately.
Okay. Well, again, it's one of those things. I won't agree to that, but I do agree it's possible, right? So yeah, I agree that it's possible. I still don't believe that's what's gonna happen to this stuff that we're collecting, But unfortunately, we've got to be around, let's say, in another 20 years, almost a full generation, to see what happens, right? We'll have to revisit it, in the long term and see what happens. Who knows, Daniel Evan, thank you for dropping in, my friend. Appreciate it, and thank you for that comment. Yeah, there's more bids, more demand, of course, exactly, absolutely. And yes, we can absolutely we have to, right? Because we are still speculating on the future of the market, where it's all going. So clearly none of us can actually say for sure, for certain, what will happen, right? So of course, but it's great to have the discourse. I love it. I love it. I love that Larry's sticking to his guns, and I guess we'll see, right? We'll see. Hopefully we're all here long enough to be able to look back in another 10, 20 years to see, if we could revisit the topic and see what happened, age out equals dead. Okay, 20 years ago comics. Yeah, Daniel makes another good point. This is kind of goes into what I was saying about the golden age, whatever, silver age, whatever. People always come in and listen. Okay, even if I go, Alberto, if I go with your point about what you were saying about the golden age art, okay, that maybe it'll be less people, okay? But if it really was less people, as little as you think, I have to believe with the law of supply and demand in existence, I have to believe if you were right, then I have to believe the golden age art today, golden age comics, they would not be at the values that they currently are. They're at record levels. So to me, what that tells me is that there are more speculators, collectors, dealers, call them what you want. It doesn't matter, right? There are more people in that market of golden age comic books than I think you think. Because I think that's the only way to explain why the prices are where they at. The only other way to explain it would be, there's only a few hundred guys now, so that must mean that the guys who deal and wheel and deal in it are all manipulating that market. And we know that that's bullshit because we see it's not just dealers that control comics anymore and buy and sell, right? It's auction houses. And you can see auction houses selling that stuff, tons of it.
Yeah, but it goes back to the, obviously, with the differences, right? With a comparison to Picasso art, it doesn't mean that there's more collectors. There's less and less people who can afford millions potentially to get that stuff, but there is interest in there. There's going to be less collectors, but it's going to be collectors that have more means and higher means. And as that art becomes scarce, that's why I was saying there's going to be less collectors, but I think that doesn't mean the prices are going to go down. And we see that almost in every collectible, right? I think baseball cards, I don't think kids these days give a crap about baseball cards anymore as they used to 20 years ago. You still see some of those cards going up in prices for some of the really old ones that most people don't even know who some of these players might be. It's just there's going to be a consolidation. There's less people that care about it. The people that are willing to pay more for it as those pieces just become rarer and more meaningful. And that's ultimately what I mean. I don't think that means a crash in the market or in the prices. It just means less people.
Oh, no. But we're no longer on the topic of whether this can crash or not. We're talking on the topic of because you were saying that what Arango made the point of, but who comes after us? So he's right. He's making the assumption that he believes we're probably the last generation, and after that, who knows what's going to happen 20, 30 years from now. I'm saying what Marcus' comment is kind of making the point. If it's not movies, it's video games. If it's not video games, it's some other IP copyright where of course the copyrights have value, these trademarks have value, the characters have value. They will come out in some media form or another. They will put those characters out there, and that's what keeps them alive and the interest alive for the next generation. That answers your question as to where does the next generation of collectors of this stuff come from? That's where. If there's always a new generation getting interested in stuff from the past when it comes to cartoons, comics, whatever, you know what I mean? Especially in this hobby of comic books, but
are they going to be interested in buying art? And to me, that's where maybe these covers that we're all complaining about that are very generic are going to be more meaningful to new collectors than a random panel page from 1985 of two characters talking, right? So who knows what that ends up meaning. It's
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else I can say. I believe that there's no reason for us to believe that we should be the last generation, and then it dies. I just don't. Why? Why would you think that? To me, the historical precedence is that look, it's been an entire generation has passed since the internet started, right? And it's been up, 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 up. It's still very strong and healthy. And that's just the artwork. Okay, don't forget the artwork. Collecting the artwork it's still considered very new compared to collecting comic books. And so when you look at comic books themselves, even with the brand new publishing industry being in trouble since the 1990s, let's say since Marvel went bankrupt and sort of came out of bankruptcy, and they never really recovered. Right, the industry has never really recovered. And yet, look at the conventions. It still feels like the business in general, and by business I mean the umbrella of comics, comic art, whatever, all of it. Entertainment of comic book characters is what I'm kind of referring to. And it's still not only alive but burgeoning. So that's why I can't. To me, that's proof. I mean, that's like if there's any such thing as proof, right? To me, like that's as close as you're gonna get, and especially since it's historical precedent, as you're gonna get to seeing that, like you should be. I think people should be confident that we are not the last generation, and then others will come along. Hey, listen, look, you and I, okay, and a bunch of other guys here tonight, we're like in our 40s and 50s, okay. And some guys are in their 60s. Okay, fine. Yet I also know several guys here in the chat are in their 30s. So, you know what I mean? So it's almost a full generation separation between the younger and the older guys. And so you could be saying, well, or I guess I could be using that argument and saying, well, why are those guys who are 35 or 34, right? Why are they here? Like, how did they get here? How come they're collecting art? Right? I thought you said there was no new generation coming in, but isn't that proof that there are always younger guys will always come in? I don't know. Tell me I'm wrong again. I don't know.
No, I think this is how we gave you the opportunity to do this show every quarter or every 6 months or once a year, because this is going to continue to be a debate. And ultimately, I don't think any of us really know where things are going to go. There's definitely plenty of opinions here, and Larry's making great points, and a lot of us, I don't think any of us plan on abandoning and selling out of our collections anytime soon. So the interest is definitely going to continue and keep the market stable, and definitely not crash for the time being, but I don't know for how long that necessarily will be the case. But
yeah,
I guess the state of our hobby is strong at this point, I would say. But yeah, I agree with Larry, and I think he's making some great points that we shouldn't necessarily be convinced that it's crash proof. But I think there's enough of us that I think if something were to go down again, and I said it a couple of times, is we would control the supply to a certain extent, where we would not let prices to really crash down too much. I think a lot of us would just not sell the art, hold on to it, and make sure that the demand did not outpace the supply and the prices stayed high.
Right. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Larry's clearing up what I had asked him earlier. Yeah. Sorry. I'm just all show I've been behind. I never caught up. I was talking about the publishing. Yeah. Okay. And the implosion. Yeah. But the publishing side is different from the collecting of the back issues, right? Sort of two different things. Marvel cutbacks. Yeah. But back issues fell in the 80s and they are falling now, but not a big across the board. Key issues, because that's what it's. A lot of it is speculative. There's a more nuance to it, Larry. I guess is what I'm saying with comics. There's a lot more nuance right? A lot of people are just speculators slash collectors, and they speculate for different reasons. And so a lot of things go up and down, more volatilely than artwork. First of all, because it is speculation more than collecting, and also because there's more copies than just one. So all these things kind of factor in as well, But I still believe that the comics, they ultimately level out and then resume their upward climb, and I think that's what's probably going to happen again, And yeah, like Comic Art Boston agrees with what I had said. He was, the point about people will always be interested in history, particularly history of hobbies, And I think that's why that's really what keeps younger people who see a movie and that's how they discovered the superhero. Okay. And then, that somehow leads them to somebody they know telling them, oh yeah, read this. And that's fun. And next thing you know, they're reading and they become readers, and then eventually, oh wow, you can buy the art from this. Ooh, it's a trickle down effect, and it's just been happening generation after generation. So I guess I'm really adamant about why would it change now? Why would we be the last? I just don't believe that. I can't believe that. I just can't see that happening, Money for nothing and chicks for free. Thank you. Neil wants to know, are you dressed up as an artist for Halloween? He likes it. He's actually wearing a vintage George Perez shirt. Yeah, you might want to show them a little bit. What's the pattern, man?
It's Tweety Bird. It's Tweety Bird and Sylvester for sure.
Larry's really adamant. He really wants to make his point. Cartoons went back to the 30s, passed down to generations. The market still crashed. But again, Larry, it's not the same kind of product. The way that you, it's like again, what I said about with cartoons is that you didn't go on a weekly or monthly basis to a store that sold you the ability to watch cartoons. You sit there and watch cartoons. And yes, I know I'm describing what a theater sounds like, right? But there wasn't this schedule where, like the publishing schedule of comics, where you constantly go there and they bring you into the store every week. That makes a huge difference. The continuity aspect of it all, huge difference, So that's why I say to that. And prices are not okay. So he says, all total prices are not likely to crash. It's okay. Marcus points out there are speculators as well for whom the hobby has little or no meaning, but still, all total prices are not likely to crash, right? So Aranga replies, we came into comic art from reading comics. I had no nostalgia for Golden Age comics, still don't today. My nostalgia is rooted in the 90s. The percentage of kids reading comics today is negligible. But I'm saying you have no nostalgia for Golden Age comics, but a lot of people shouldn't. And yet that market is still big and strong, and the stuff still sells for record prices, just like original art and whatever else. That market's not on the verge of collapse in any way, not even close to it. It's as healthy as it's ever been. That's my point. And that's given the fact that according to your argument, Golden Age comics should no longer be collected. That market should have died, and perhaps even Silver Age at this point. It's been long enough where that should have been a dying market, where the last generation of buyers already kind of are getting into their 60s at this point, or older. So, and it's not. It's still as healthy as ever, all those markets. That's what I'm trying to say. So my point is, it doesn't matter how long it's been, there always seems to be newer generations that come in to take over, So, Ruben, you talking about Golden Age comics sustaining. That's true for the name comics. Bullet Man was Fawcett's #2 seller right behind Captain Marvel. Who's buying Bullet Man today? Listen, I'm not a collector / speculator of Golden Age art. I'm only interested in the comics hobby, like from an outside perspective, on the periphery, outside looking in, just seeing what's happening in the market. So I can't answer the question of who's buying a Bullet Man, whatever. I can tell you is that if you go to conventions and you just look at auctions, you don't even have to leave your house. You look at auctions, all their supply of Golden Age comic books are selling, right? The sell-through is typically 100%. It all finds a new home, and it all sells for good prices. It's not like this, this stuff is worth a tenth of what it used to be worth once upon a time, So that's what I'm saying. The earliest artwork in comics will command high prices, but not so much for newer items. I don't necessarily agree. I mean, now, yes, because the new stuff is still new, right? We all know that typically age brings with it more value, right? The vintage factor. Once it's accrued a vintage factor to it, and then it solidifies with more value. But of course, right now, right, people will think, oh, well, more value is in that older stuff than in the brand new stuff, right? I understand why people don't want to pay $40,000 for a brand new Jim Lee cover that he just drew this afternoon. Like, I get that. I don't understand why somebody would pay the price for it, but they do, right? But most stuff, yes, most stuff is still, it's the older stuff that's worth more, But look what Ian says, Alberto. I would love to have more focus on some of the golden age. He doesn't, but he'd love to. He loves history. That's kind of my point. And by the way, Ian's a younger guy. He's one of the younger guys in the hobby. So I just want to point that out, And no, Jason, right. Jason, look, I'm not saying that kids are taking over. Of course not, because you still need money to get involved in this hobby. Okay. But the quote unquote kids in our hobby are like early to mid 30s. Okay. Those are the kids in our hobby. But those people keep coming in. I keep meeting new people in their 30s that tell me, oh, I just started collecting in the last couple of years, So those will be the guys who replace us. And then after them, some newer guys in their 30s probably will too, That's how I see it.
We're irreplaceable.
Say again?
We're irreplaceable. No one will replace us.
You're comparing eras when readership was healthy and new readers were being generated. No, I'm not, because I'm not talking about the new comic market. You're thinking about the new comic market. I'm thinking about the back issue market, because I believe, and again, nothing I can prove, right? But I believe that even if the new market was to die, okay, I mean, it'll never truly die. And hopefully they just stop with the whole floppy thing and start doing like European style albums, original graphic novels once every few months or whatever. That's what I think they should have done 20 years ago. But anyways, so I don't think it'll ever truly die, the new publishing business, right? But even though it stays, let's say, kind of where it is now, where it has been for 20 years now, that still, check it out, that still hasn't affected how strong the back issue market is. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the new stuff. I'm talking about the old stuff, okay? Because the original art, most of the original art that trades hands is not from this month's comic. It's, from last year and after, right? Older stuff. So that's what I'm talking about. All right. I haven't seen a comic book in a barbershop in years. Okay. I mean, either. Let me see. Jason, good points. Jason. Okay. I get offers for my art. Let me see. Hey, Daniel again. So I get offers for my art, but it's business people, especially in movie biz and executives. I don't just get offers from collectors anymore. It is higher pressure now than ever. Yeah, I mean, look, we all kind of suspected that those types of people were coming into the market, and that would be the way to explain what was happening over the last several years. I can't say for a fact. I know who these people are, but that's the suspicion on a lot of well-heeled people. Whether they're buying it because they love it or because it's just another asset class they see, who knows? Who knows, Okay, so that's it there. What else is there? I'm trying to, oh my God. So where are we? 219. Oh my God, I fell way, way behind. Okay, sorry guys, but good night, honey, even though you said it like 20 minutes ago. Let me jump ahead. Sorry, people, but I feel so bad about this because I've never done this. I'm going to jump ahead. Thank you, Stanley, for the loving the thoughtful and passionate debate tonight. You're very welcome. I appreciate you coming in. And there are more conventions, TV shows, movies, action figures, video games than ever before. It's hitting more generations globally than ever before. Thank you. That's kind of another point that sort of underpins my argument. This stuff, it's all pop culture, man. There's this incredible love for pop culture. There always has been. I think it's stronger today than it ever has been. So that by itself is what gives me the belief that I just, of course, it's going to continue for the long term. You know, I don't, yeah, I don't.
Is it just a temporary boost though because of the movies and the
No,
new focus on the movies, or is there going to be something in 10 years? Because as the MCU in particular starts kind of dying down and people are tired of it, are people going to get tired of this and these boosts that we're seeing right now going to die temporarily? Or maybe no, maybe something else will come up after the movies. Now it'll be video games, it will be who knows what might be that prop it up. But I do feel like we have seen that push recent because of those movies that I don't know if it will dwindle again though.
I appreciate that, Iranga. We probably won't be around exactly to say I told you so. Thank you. No, I know, Alberto. You know, good point. Again, look, we all have to believe whatever we believe and stick to it, and that's it. I mean, you know what? We're all open to changing our minds if things change. We see things on the horizon that make us go, oh, hold on, maybe there is something to that theory or whatever, you know. But like Marcus says, you still only, and you always will only need two people willing to spend money in an auction to make your art have value, you know, not a deep well of them. Although, of course, it is always healthier in hobby terms to have a well, right? It's better to have depth than just a small number of people who are all the same buyers all the time, right? I'd rather have that for sure, you know. Okay, I'm going to skip a bunch again. The CJ, thank you, sir. That's a good point. The state of the chat is strong. Daniel says again, Daniel, I appreciate you being coming in today and being so active, man. We know which artists, characters, and titles won't drop much. Yeah, I mean, I think across the board, I see it not really. I guess if it drops, it won't be much, I don't think. Aranga again, 35-year-old started reading comics in the 90s, just the way the math works. Read what I said. I never said I was part of the last generation. No, but other people did. And I think you mentioned, I think you did say, though, that, you know, I think you questioned, so who's going to come in after us? Something to that effect, didn't you? So Jason says, great show, everyone. Thanks, Ruben Alberto. Keep going for a couple more hours. Yeah, right. I'll watch tomorrow. No, we got to go. And I forgot to ask Alberto how long he was going to give me, and he probably needs to go too. So we are going to.
Well, luckily, I'm in the West Coast, so it's not as horribly late as it is for folks to the East Coast. I think definitely what's clear here, Ruben, is it's a passionate topic. And I think next time you do a show like this, you're probably ready to have a panel of very passionate people here and not just somebody like me trying to talk a lot of the stuff. It looks like a lot of volunteers here probably would step up for your next show for sure.
Well, I don't know that there's a lot of volunteers. Larry,
there's a lot of opinions, at least.
A lot of opinions, exactly. But I would certainly bring in Larry for sure. And we'll definitely do that sometime in the near future, I guess. I thought maybe, like I said, maybe every 6-12 months, whatever. But people love to talk about this, so who knows? Maybe we'll do it once in a while, you know, whenever we're in the mood.
And the one thing that I'm surprised we've managed to really avoid largely today was the fear whenever I see these shows is that it's just going to be about prices going up and why are prices going up. I think we've been able to talk a lot about other stuff and not just prices going up, which is where a lot of these conversations, I think many times end up going down to, which ends up being pretty boring, I think, for most people. So,
for sure. And TJ, I just want to say, the thing about that is that's not a good example because you are right. And it's a little softer today. However, it was never really a big market to begin with. It never was big. You know, the biggest it ever got, the actual truth of the matter is that the vintage paperback art market, it was never bigger than 2008 to 2012 when Heritage sold off the Martinetti collection. Okay, after he passed away, and 4,500 pieces came to the market. And that was fantastic because people, that's how I started collecting that stuff. That's how I started collecting, because poor guy had to die for me to get into the market, because I was like, oh my God, wow. I'd known of the guy, and I was like, oh my God, his stuff is coming to Heritage. Oh my God. I stopped collecting comic art for like 8 years because I wanted to reserve my money to buy stuff that you see on my wall, yeah, but that was the hottest peak, and it never really got stronger then, and so it's never been a huge market to begin with. So I can't really use that as a comparison, Let me fast forward, everybody. So sorry. I'm going to have to read this when I rewatch later on, and to see everybody's comments that I've missed. But I just want to, before we go, I want to catch maybe some recent comments. Mark, all collector markets are driven by midlife agers of a certain age with the resources to buy stuff to recapture what they missed or made them happy. A lot of it, certainly, a lot of it. That's absolutely it. Good night, Comic Art Boston. Thank you so very much. And he's thanking you, Alberto, too. There we go. Good night. Thank you. Thank you for sticking around. I appreciate it. I didn't expect you to. And yeah, it's been great that you were able to stick around this long. So thank you. Okay. Larry's incessant. In the 80s, animation industry was a whole lot bigger than the US auto industry, but when production cells dried up and limited edition cells and computer-generated product failed to fill the gap. Yeah, what can I tell you, man? What can I tell you? Bye, George. Somebody said bye to George. Bye, George. Vinyl record industry should be dead too, and suddenly it's resurging. I just read an article last week, not even a week ago, where for the first time in, I think, 20 years, vinyl outsold. Vinyl was outselling digital, was it?
Something like CDs. I would say CDs. I doubt that it would outsell digital, but I wouldn't be surprised if vinyl was outselling CDs these days.
Okay. But yeah, making comeback. Yeah, absolutely. We need to have this conversation in real time, brother. Well, I know it's hard, right? Typing out counters 20 minutes later is just not getting us there. I know, man. Sorry. What can I tell you? And especially with this topic, I knew that we would be behind all show long. So, yeah. And who knows? Maybe the next time we do this, I don't know. I don't think it'll help. But maybe it will. I was thinking maybe make it a round table, because we haven't done a round table in a long time anyways. Maybe we do a roundtable discussion about this, but at least that way I can let the 3 other guys in the studio do all the talking. While they're doing the talking, I'll do mostly speaking. I'll be speaking for the guys in the chat, and that way I can keep up with them. It's still not a foolproof thing, because of course when I see something that I want to put up on the screen, I still have to wait for the guys in the studio to finish talking, right? And so it still throws us back. So there's nothing we can really do about it, but that's just how it is. But thank you, brother. I appreciate you coming in and hanging in so long. Jay Mo, another new guy. Hey, what's up? Welcome, man. The biggest problem today is the price of single issues of modern comics. It's a huge barrier to entry. I agree, albums are better even now. Like I said, the comics, it's a children's format at an adult price. That's the problem. That's why I've been saying for decades, it's time those floppy things went the way of the dodo. We have enough to collect back issues, and the brand new American, new publishing industry should be graphic novels, trade paperbacks, whatever. That's it. Brand new, and that's it. Love buying comic collections. Get them super cheap. It's what everyone buys to read now, and sell much cheaper than new comics, which I see fine work about badly written. Okay, there you go. Let's see what else. Great. Hey, Larry. Great debate. We actually agree way more than we disagree. I listen, Larry. Hey, no hard feelings whatsoever. Like I said, this isn't about arguing. It's about discussing and sharing ideas. That's exactly what I wanted to accomplish with tonight's episode. We did that. I think it was a huge success, especially if we judge by the quantity and interest from everybody who showed up and spoke their 2 cents in the live chat. which I wish there was a better way for me to, more keep up with more quickly. But that's what we do. But I appreciate it, brother. I appreciate that, and for sure I'll be in touch for a future show that we can plan out together. And let me see. So, Chuck had stepped away, just got back. Has the giant museum of narrative art being open in Los Angeles been addressed? No, we never spoke about that. There's so much to talk. This is, like I said, Chuck, there's so much we could talk about. So many, we can do multiple episodes. We can do like every week the same thing probably, and people would show up. So, but no, so we no idea. But
that is an interesting point without devolving too far. And I know it's getting late for people too, is we do see, I feel like lately, the last few years, comic art becoming more of a centerpiece in museums or exhibits or other places where before you would have never thought to see comic art being displayed as prominently as it is. So we're definitely seeing that museum angle popping up more and more for sure too.
Yeah, and you know what, Chuck? In a future State of the Hobby address, hopefully one will coincide with whenever that thing is opening. I keep hearing it's next year. But when is next year coming? I thought this year was next year, but so I don't know when it's happening. But and eventually, I mean, we at that point we could probably do a whole entire episode just talking about what we think about the news we may have heard about what's been happening with that museum. So it'll come up in future shows for sure. What else do we got? Sorry, there's so much. It was awesome. I mean, I always have a great time at these shows with you guys. But these were, where there's even more chat. The more chat there is, the more I enjoy it, right? Because it's all of us together. That's what my channel is about. It's just everybody getting together and shooting the breeze, So really appreciate you, man. I'm glad you hung out this late. So round two, exactly. Round 2, 3, 4, we can do it, Oh, and Aranga is giving you props, Alberto. There you go. So enjoyed listening to you, and so did I. so did I. And of course, you've already given him your back props, and I don't want to get that. There's more thing. We can go on for hours still, honestly. But thank you, Daniel, and thank you for coming in, man. You should come in more often. I appreciate it. I appreciate not only you coming in, but that you came in and gave of yourself to everybody else. That's awesome. I appreciate you, man. Old collectors are just naturally aging out of comics. With newer stuff again, but the back issues continue. That's always going to keep going, I believe. Manga's hella woke with gender changes. Really? Okay, they're even bringing the whole woke stuff to that. I guess it's not shocking. Great lively chat. Thanks, Alberto. Enjoyed your views. There you go. And you probably answered him already. Great show, great topic. Need to watch it again on replay. Hey, thank you, David. I appreciate you, brother. And get back to work before they fire you, ass. He's in Australia, so yeah.
I see my West Coast crowd definitely represented at this point, while everybody in the East Coast seems to turning into pumpkins these days.
Yeah. That's exactly it. The Rickster, he's another West Coaster, but look at that. He's saying good night all. Even he has to go and probably eat, because you guys have to eat. I know. I've taken you away from dinner time.
Eating's overrated.
But hey, guys, thank you very much again. Let me quickly just show you here, just so you guys know. Next week, I'm going to have a collector that you guys may not know from visual. But next week's guest, we're going to do a comic art hangout with Jason Kim. And he is the gentleman on CAF. You a lot of you probably know him just from seeing him on CAF. He's with the what's the name of the he's got that kick-ass avatar on CAF. Evangelion, New Age or New Something Evangelion. Sorry, I can't remember. I'm just going from my memory, the memory from when we mentioned him last time, So he's been collecting for some years. He's got his own YouTube channel. I think it'll be a fun chat with him. So please tune in next week for the hangout with Jason. And what else is that? The week after that, there's going to be, I don't have the thumbnail made. The week after that will be another comic art hangout with Fred Chamberlain. And so that should be fun as well. And then maybe a show and tell the week after, but that guest hasn't confirmed yet. So a lot of good fun stuff happening and coming up in the future, guys. So as always, really appreciate you stopping in to watch and especially to participate. It was awesome. Alberto, thank you so much. Been like I said, I was wanting to have you on for a long time, and so glad that we did it. Not only did it, but did it for this. You were a great guest with great insight and views and opinions on this topic. So I really appreciate it, man.
Yeah, it was definitely fun to show up and fun to read all the comments. Again, I'm not sure how you manage. Obviously, it's a challenge for you as well to manage all the comments, but yeah, for sure. Funny. Thanks for having me. Thanks for the lively conversation, and I'm glad I didn't put everybody to sleep and kill the chat. At least it seems like it was going.
It was killer. Thank you, guys. I mean, listen, guys, I apologize one last time for not having been able to keep up with the comments, but take it in a positive way, because it just with that just goes to show is how awesome you guys all were tonight. That's the bottom line. That's really what it means. Yeah, I mean, if this was a typical sort of interview show where me and Alberto would have been talking, and you know, I just kind of, you know, once in a blue moon, pop one of your comments or questions on the screen. Yeah, I could keep up, because of course that style is predicated on skipping most of the comments and questions, right? But you guys know my whole channel is all about being a hangout, right? It's all of us together coming in to chat, shoot the shit, and throw our opinions out. And yeah, you guys certainly did that tonight. So it kicks ass. I appreciate you guys again. Thank you very much. And of course, Stanley, I got to pop your usual comment. Keep the show going another hour or two, please. You wouldn't be Stanley if you know, it wouldn't be you. It wouldn't be this show if it wasn't for you saying that.
What's your longest show ever, Ruben? Do you have a record?
The record, we're far from it. The record ended up being the sales show that I did a few weeks back. That was 3 hours, 20 minutes. Or was it something like that? Was it? But the one with Dino, didn't that one go like 3 hours? I don't know. But yeah, the longest is about 3 hours, 20 minutes. Yeah. So there you go. So Marcus, so what are we supposed to take away from this show? Market strong or weak? Hey man, I say not only strong, I say very strong, with exceptions that are weakening, very few exceptions that are weakening, but generally, yeah, still very strong and going up, not crashing. My opinion. That's all. That's all I'm not gonna speak for anybody else. And there you have it. But thanks, bud. I appreciate you as always. Great commentary. That's it, guys. So thank you again, Alberto. Appreciate you. Hey, stick around just for a minute if you don't mind, Alberto. Sure. We'll talk backstage. Okay. Yeah. That's it.
Thanks, everybody, and yeah, have a good night. Thanks for having me, Ruben.
Oh no, you're very, very welcome. My pleasure, my friend. All right, guys. Thank you very, very much, and we'll talk.